with Sam Seder.
The destiny of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Wednesday, January 18th, 2023. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Erika Pinheiro, Executive Director of Otro Lado. On the Biden immigration record. Also on the program today, Brian Mier, correspondent for teleSUR English, writer at Brasil Wire, on the recent coup attempt in Brazil. Also on the program today, debt ceiling game of chicken commences as Republicans move to take the country hostage. George Santos gets awarded 2 committee assignments as it's revealed he stole $3,000 from a GoFundMe to help a homeless vet's dog. New York State Senate gears up for fight with Kathy Hochul over a conservative chief judge nominee. Matt Schlapp, sued by Herschel Walker aide for sexual battery and defamation. Ukrainian cabinet member and 14 others killed in a helicopter crash outside of Kyiv. Maine governor moves to expand abortion access in that state. House Republicans looking to impeach Department of Homeland Security Secretary Mayorkas because we have a border. University of Illinois faculty strike continues. 1,500 educators staging a labor action yesterday. North Dakota House weighs book bannings for books with sexual content. And Lena Khan's chief of staff heads to the Department of Transportation to help out a completely incompetent Pete Buttigieg. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. It is always a special day on Wednesdays because of how this day catapulted a co-host into fame after
and
she
fortune.
coined and fortune, and after she coined the phrase that I every week I hear more and more people use it.
I know. I mean, if you look, it's Hump Day, folks.
Thank you.
If you look up Matt and I last week, we looked up our net worth according to those those websites, and that's how I got. That's how I got that $500,000 fortune. And I didn't really structure the contract well for Hump Day because somehow Matt got like a way too big of a chunk of it.
Yeah,
and that's why
gotta
he's
read the
worth
contract.
$1.5 million.
Nice couple points every time somebody says that. So.
Yeah.
That's funny because Saul the other day, we were having dinner and he looks at me and goes, "What's your net worth?" And I'm like, "Excuse me?" And he goes, "I know what your net worth is." And I said, "First off, you don't know what net worth means. And second off, you don't know what it is because you've been searching online." And I said, "I have some very bad news for you." I don't know if this was like
6'2" if someone wants to update my facts, buddy.
Yeah, it says he's 5'8", right? He got shortchanged, no pun intended.
Saul's birthday's coming up, and so I think he was getting he was starting to have his eyes were starting to bulge.
He's trying to make a case for
very bad news.
A big gift.
Why are people like a new shirt? No, this is my gray shirt. I have
It's spiffy.
Yeah. I got this when I went to the Siegfried and Roy sample sale.
Yeah.
All right, let's get into this. you don't hear as much about Davos as I feel like we used to. I think they low key it a little bit. And if you're interested in Davos, I would go back. This is maybe 10 years now. Chris Hayes wrote an amazing piece about Davos, and really about like fractal inequality, where the millionaires at Davos get really, really upset because they don't have the key card that takes them up, literally up in the elevator to the billionaires, like a lounge area. But there's a reason why you go to Davos, and it probably changes for different people, right? But Kristen Sinema and Joe Manchin are in Davos for the World Economic Forum meeting. And here is Kristen Sinema and Joe Manchin, or Kristen Sinema, discussing her reasons as to why she became an independent and the filibuster fight. And when you see the way this ends in the second clip, you'll understand what they're doing there.
Because since last time we met, you become an independent.
That's correct.
Happened that same day or the day after, didn't it?
So, as folks know, I have formally declared my independence from what I consider to be a deeply broken two-party system. Those who know me know that I was always an independent voice and always have been for the things that I believe in and for my state and for my country. But I do think it's important to note that what you've heard about partisanship, I believe, is accurate. You know, in the last 2 years, we think.
Pause it for 1 second. You know, and maybe I've missed it, but I would be curious as to, from an ideological perspective, for her to explain like what it is that is different.
Did you see the third senator up there, by the way, Sam?
Chris Coons?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. Oh yeah. No. Believe me.
Biden's
they're traveling around. I mean, that's the point, right?
They're auditioning. This is like a corporate donation emporium.
Exactly. And but it just shows you the hollowness of this idea about complaining about the duopoly, which of course we have a duopoly in this country in terms of the parties, particularly mostly on a federal and a national level, not necessarily as much on a local level, but nevertheless,
for the people in that room, it's less of a duo. It's kind of they have actual. I don't know. Maybe I'm splitting hairs, but like both parties work for those
this
people.
is the point. This is the point: is that it's very easy to complain about the duopoly as, you know, just simply some type of like, I got a problem with the process, as opposed to actually articulating what your ideology is or where you stand specifically on issues. Right. Because the reason why Chris Coons is there with Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema is because when they complain about the duopoly, they are trying to protect corporate interests. Period. End of story.
And that's why, yeah. I mean, that's when they talk about discord in Washington or no one being able to agree on anything. They're like, why don't people just agree with our completely pro-wealthy, pro-corporate agenda? I mean, it's getting a little too intense on our side of the aisle. They're too extreme.
And let's also be clear, you know, if the problem solvers, which is the caucus that is supposedly made up of these types of people, was meaningful in any way, there wouldn't have been 15 votes to get McCarthy elected, and McCarthy wouldn't have had to give the store away to, you know, Marjorie Taylor Greene, who 3-4 years ago was not only like, you know, trying to hawk loogies through AOC's, mail slot in Congress, but was also doing interviews about how the Clintons were assassins. Essentially. And, but all right, continue.
But I do think it's important to note that what you've heard about partisanship.
Pause it for one more second. I'm sorry. It's ridiculous for me not to address this. We should say Kristen Sinema is, got a lead role in the prequel to Game of Thrones.
Or
we just go back.
The Hunger Games. I mean, she's got the Hunger Games on top with the glasses and the Jon Snow outfit on the bottom.
She's doing live action Bo Peep.
Yeah.
She sheared a sheep for that. Yeah.
I also will say I almost forgot what she sounds like because she is the reverse of Joe Manchin, even though they serve the same function, because he has never met a camera and microphone he doesn't like, and she chooses not to speak to anybody for no accountability.
independent voice and always have been for the things that I believe in and for my state and for my country. But I do think it's important to note that what you've heard about partisanship, I believe, is accurate. You know, in the last 2 years, if we think, you know, January 6th, which is a horrible day from 2 years ago, created, I think, concern and fear for every patriotic American across the country. But in the resulting 2 years, the Democratic Party shared a narrative that said we would not have any more free and fair elections in this country if the United States Congress didn't eliminate the filibuster and pass a massive voting rights package. As we all know, the filibuster was not eliminated. Joe and I were not interested in sacrificing that important guardrail for the institution. That massive voting rights bill was not passed through Congress. And then we had a free and fair election all across the country. And as has been noted, the outcome of that election was different than many people expected. Most election deniers lost across the country, and individuals of both political parties, some extreme, some moderate, won. So we had a free and fair election. So one could posit that the push by one political party to eliminate an important guardrail in an institution in our country may have been premature or overreaching in order to get the short-term victories they wanted. Let me fast forward to where we are today.
Okay, I'm sorry. We just have to pause it for one more second. When she says guardrail, I want people to understand what that means. That means a block on democracy. That's exactly what the filibuster is. I mean, the House has a million problems, but at the very least, it's a majority vote. If something gets passed in the House, it gets passed. It doesn't need a 60 vote threshold to get passed. In the Senate, the filibuster that she's defending so ardently there is a guardrail, yes, for the people in that room, from taxation, from paying their fair share, from the Senate's already an undemocratic institution. When it was a 50-50 split, the 50 Democrats represented 40 million more people than the 50 Republicans. On top of that, what she's defending is an extra piece of undemocracy, which blocks legislation that's more democratic directly from the House. And she's saying that to the people who want the filibuster in place, just so it's clear for people.
And we should also add that what she's talking about, this piece of legislation, was not like 2 votes for every one cast for a Democrat. It was essentially a reauthorization of the Voting Rights Act, which had been struck down and decimated by a Supreme Court with a majority of conservative judges appointed by presidents who did not win the popular election. And a Supreme Court, mind you, that eviscerated the Voting Rights Act, despite the fact that the Senate reauthorized it like 98-2 in 2007. But continue.
We saw the House of Representatives struggle for multiple days in a row as Kevin McCarthy, dear friend of mine, had to continue conceding point after point after point to the radical right of the GOP, to a point where he's now in an unenviable position that will make it very difficult for us to meet our obligation when the debt limit fight comes up later this year. Those are just 2 examples of the pull that you see political parties giving in order to get everything they want.
And again, the problem solvers, which are her people, could have easily resolved that situation by coming up with a candidate, where those, whatever 7 Republicans are supposedly part of the problem solvers caucus could have voted for a moderate Republican that Democrats would have voted for, or there was her way doesn't provide any solutions. It is only, as Emma was just articulating, a way to block things from happening. And why is that valuable? Who is that valuable to? Play this next clip. You'll get a sense.
Partisanship serving us? I would posit to you that it's not. And so while some would say that there were reluctant folks working in Congress in the last 2 years, I would actually say that that was the basis for the productivity for some incredible achievements that made a difference for the American people in the last 2 years.
And we still don't agree on getting rid of the filibuster.
That's correct.
Thank you. I was
High five right there.
High five.
The idea that because some midterms went okay, that the threat to democracy is over is extremely unserious and really annoying.
And also it discounts the fact that just because voter suppression in 1 year can be overcome doesn't mean that there isn't a tremendous amount that it isn't inhibiting democracy. Because if Democrats have to expend more resources to deal with voter suppression, that is resources they can't put somewhere else and make gains there. But understand why they high-fived each other and why they're there with Chris Coons. They are there to make it clear and to basically, announce to the wealthiest people in the world, we are on your team. What we are doing is to your benefit, and we're going to need funds.
Yep,
because
we're open for business.
In the case of Kristen Sinema, she's going to be running against the Democrats, and she's going to need a base of funding, and she does not get. There are no constituents. Her average contribution amount is going to be hovering somewhere around the maximum.
Yep. Yeah.
A couple of bucks lower than whatever the maximum amount that anybody can give will be her average donation.
And it will be interesting to see what she says about voting rights when Carrie Lake is running on the other side. I mean, God forbid, I'm hoping that, there's a Democrat that's able to come out of this. But Carrie Lake seems like she wants to run for that seat in the Senate. Election denier 101.
We're going to talk to Erika Pinheiro in just a moment. She's the executive director of Otro Lado about the past couple of weeks worth of Biden immigration moves. But first, a couple of words from our sponsor. One of those is Blinkist. And Blinkist is a great app website that allows you to understand the most important things from over 5,500 nonfiction books and podcasts in about just 15 minutes. Some are 19, some are like 14, somewhere around there. They have all sorts of nonfiction books, ranging from stuff like, relationship stuff and how-to stuff to economics. They have that Adam Tooze book about COVID. I can't remember the name of it, but we interviewed him about it. Yes. They have. I just listened to one of Michael Pollan's. It was This Is Your Mind on Plants, and I'm going to read Blinkist, the How to Change Your Mind, just because I'm interested in that. That's we've been talking about the cybocilian. I can't pronounce it, so it's not going to make a difference. But it's a great opportunity. It gives you a great opportunity to check out these books that you may not be interested in really actually sitting down with for a couple of days and reading, but you're interested in the main points of them. And they have a new feature for the premium, which they call Blinkist Connect, which essentially allows you to have like a 2-for-1. You can choose a partner, a friend, I guess your kid, and basically share your membership. And so you get basically a 2-for-1, which is awesome. Right now, Blinkist has a special offer just for our audience. You go to Blinkist.com/Majority Report, start your 7-day free trial, and get 25% off a Blinkist premium membership. Just a reminder, the Blinks come in 2 forms. One, like short form, summaries, written and audio. So check it out. That's Blinkist, spelled Blinkist, Blinkist.com/Majority Report to get 25% off and a 7-day free trial. Blinkist.com/Majority Report. And now, like I say, for a limited time, you can even use Blinkist Connect to share your premium account. You will get 2 premium subscriptions for the price of 1. Another sponsor today, last week we had an ad. I think you were, I don't know if you were here that day, Emma, but I came in and one of the first things I said to Bradley in the morning was like, I had some of that Manicura honey, and it's nuts. It really is.
Oh, okay.
It's honey, but it's not nuts.
Oh, it's honey. Yeah, it's crazy. It comes from New Zealand. They have they have their apparently a small island off of New Zealand. Bees feed on the nectar of the manuka tree, which is like a tea tree. And honestly, it makes honey like that is radically different than anything you've ever tasted. It is, and Manicura has bottled this. They have multiple different types of that honey, but they have ethical beekeeping practices, keeps it 100% raw. It's a super honey because it has unique antioxidants and prebiotics. It has a natural antibacterial compound called MGO that comes specifically from the nectar of this tea tree. It contains nutrients that support optimal immune and digestive health. I use the sweetener a little bit, stuff like tea and coffee sometimes, but I have been squeezing it into a spoon, and it's just incredibly different than any other honey I have ever tasted. It has a different consistency, and it's not quite as sweet. It is like, it's almost like caramel. It's really crazy, but you can put it on anything. Manicura's Super Honey is available in a range of easy-to-use formats, including a squeeze bottle and a compostable honey stick. So you can eat it straight, add it to your favorite food or beverage, or put it in your kids' lunch as their dessert. Saul likes multiple desserts a day. And if you head to manicura.com/majority, you're going to automatically get a free pack of honey sticks with your order. That's a $15 value. That's Manicura, MANUKORA.com/majority. Get a free pack of honey sticks with your order. It's called Honey with Superpowers for good reason. So get on it. Try this delicious, creamy caramel honey, and you won't look back with Manicura. And lastly, our last sponsor of the day, Aura. I've talked about them quite a bit. I'm uptight about maintaining my online security, particularly my, I don't want my ID stolen. And Aura protects you in about 7 different ways. When you put your email in there, social security number, your passwords, it will tell you immediately where, if those things are available on the on where criminals sell stolen information, hackers sell stolen information, and it will let you know immediately whether your email, your passwords have been compromised, your social security numbers. If you have a problem with all those sites that give up your personal information, Aura sends automatic emails to them requesting removal of your info, and that reduces the number of robocalls. Aura gives you near real-time alerts on suspicious credit inquiries. So if you're opening up a bank account for your kid, or they'll send you a notice, but if it's somebody else doing it, you also get that notice and you can shut it down. Aura gives you near real-time alerts, like I say, on those credit inquiries. They also have a VPN that allows you to stay anonymous online by keeping your browsing history and personal information safe and encrypted. They protect your devices from all sorts of like spyware and malware and viruses, so the bad guys can't break in. They help you manage what your kids can use on their devices. So you can restrict specific apps. You can set screen time limits. You can set focus time so that they do their homework instead of watching YouTube, cat videos. There's a password manager that has, so you can access your online password securely and conveniently. And then maybe you have an app that does one of those things. The beauty about Aura, it does all of them. Let Aura do the hard work of keeping you safe online. If you sign up right now, Aura's going to give you a 2-week free trial with my link. You're going to be shocked at how much of your private information Aura finds exposed in those 2 weeks. Go to aura.com/majority to start your free trial. That's AURA.com, aura.com/majority. All of our these links will be posted in the YouTube and podcast description and at majority.fm. We're going to take a quick break. When we get back, Erika Pinheiro, she's the executive director of Otro Lado. We'll be right back. We are back. Sam Seder, Emma Vigeland on the Majority Report. Joining us, Erika Pinheiro. She is the executive director of Otro Lado. Erika, welcome to the program.
Thanks for having me.
So over the past couple of weeks, really basically starting with Biden's trip to Mexico, there have been a couple of changes in the administration's immigration policy. Let's start with what happened back then. There were changes to the asylum process. Can you walk us through those?
Sure. Well, it's important to understand that Biden has really supercharged the Trump policy known as Title 42. That's a policy where they use the excuse of COVID to completely close the border to asylum seekers. So that's been in place since 2020. During that time, the majority of people seeking protection in the United States have just been stuck on the border. So there's been, now Biden is saying he's going to let in a few people. Some of them are from certain countries like Venezuela, Haiti, and Cuba, but those people need to be able to afford a plane ticket, have a financial sponsor in the United States, and fill out an app basically to make an appointment. And others are being given very limited appointments, and they too have to fill out an app and wait several weeks to actually be admitted to the United States. So it's a little bit more open, but it certainly doesn't reflect what the law says asylum should be, which is a universal right to protection.
Okay, so a couple of things. Like my understanding is that both U.S. law and international law basically say that if you come to this country, you step foot in this country, and you claim you're seeking for asylum, that you are required to have some form of due process to adjudicate that claim. And what Title 42 does is basically says, we're going to bypass that thing and we're going to bump you out. And it's amazing because it seems to be the only recognition that COVID still exists in this country by the administration. And then what you were talking about, if I understand it too, is the expansion of this parole authority, which allows for 30,000 asylum seekers a month that can stay for up to 2 years. But again, all the processes, and this is like you say, for Venezuela, Haiti, Cuba, and Nicaragua, all the processes are, there's a hurdle there in accessing these processes, but that they have narrowed the for the asylum for the other asylum seekers, and presumably it's other other people basically coming from Latin America, Central America, crossing the border. They have narrowed the scope of what constitutes a certain amount of political vulnerability or personal security, which would constitute a claim for asylum. Is that the case?
Well, I think first it's important to understand that the asylum seekers coming to the border are actually from all over the world. It's not just Latin Americans. My organization, for example, helped people from over 50 countries just in this past year. And the second thing is there's no determination. There's no predetermination of who actually qualifies for asylum. The threshold is, can you access this app? Can you fill it out? And are you lucky enough to press that button and actually get one of those coveted appointments? It works kind of like Ticketmaster, right? Where there's a concert that's going to sell out. Everyone presses the button at the same time. A few people get a ticket and everyone else is left out. That's basically what the asylum system has become. So there's no substantive determination. It's just, can you press the button fast enough?
And just give us a sense of what asylum seekers, why they are seeking asylum broadly from your experience.
So it really varies just depending on the country that a person's from, but I can just give a couple examples. So we see right now a lot of Russians at the border who oppose the invasion of Ukraine or don't want to fight in the war. So they're here at the border trying to seek asylum in the United States. There's Venezuelans who are fleeing political persecution or economic subjugation, just all different kinds of reasons. There's Iranians that we've seen an increasing number of Iranians who are fleeing oppression by that regime. So it really just varies by country. What I can say is that the conditions at the US-Mexico border are so bad for refugees that first, there's not even power in a lot of these shelters. Like they're not going to be able to charge their phone, never mind download an app or have internet access. It's incredibly dangerous. So the majority of people have experienced some kind of crime victimization. And, it's so bad that families are sending their minor children alone. And we see these stories all the time. So it's, people are fleeing unimaginable horrors, but they're certainly not safe waiting on this side of the border. And definitely most of them can't wait a few weeks for an appointment.
And so the vast majority of these people, we should be clear, are basically in camps in Mexico.
Yeah, there's camps that have sprung up, and they, continue to spring up along the border. Sometimes the Mexican government will come in and clear them out and deport people back to home countries under pressure from the United States, of course. There's a variety of shelters. There's a few dozen shelters here in Tijuana. Some are run by church groups, so they're decent, and others are literally like in an abandoned building with people sleeping on the floor with rats crawling all over them. So it just varies. To give you a sense, there are refugees who have money, right? There's people who have resources and they're staying in hotels. They usually wait in Mexico City or a safer place before they come to the border to seek asylum. Those are the people getting the app appointments. It's not the person sleeping on the rat covered floor, with a baby next to them. It's the rich person who has the means to have internet access, have a safe, warm hotel room, who's able to press the button on CBP1 and get that appointment.
Let's turn. There was another initiative, and I want to get your opinion on this, and maybe just like an overall assessment of where we're at in terms of the Biden administration, what has to happen, because it is at best mixed, and it really just sort of depends on sort of like what aspect we're looking at. Mayorkas, the DHS secretary, last week unveiled an initiative to allow immigrant workers to give them a safer legal process to report unsafe or exploitive working conditions. What can you tell us about that, and what's your perspective on that? It supposedly will defer deportation so that the threat of reporting an abusive workplace is diminished in some way.
I mean, it's definitely a positive development. It is the result of years of advocacy by immigrant labor groups. We've had programs in the past where immigrants can report trafficking to DHS or labor violations. So overall, I think it is positive. Now, the real problem that needs to be addressed is the fact that a person's legal status is tied to their job, right? So even if it's safer to report violations, and even if you're not going to get deported, if you lose that job, you're probably losing your legal status as well. So you might be in this kind of limbo for a little while your case is adjudicated, but it doesn't mean that you're actually going to get status in the United States. So that problem still remains.
So give me your assessment of where the Biden administration has been up to this point overall, and what are some of the biggest asks or the most urgent asks of the administration at this point?
I think that the Biden administration has failed to articulate a positive vision of what immigration could be. Really, what I've seen over the past few years is that the right wing has dominated the news cycle and really redefined what the immigration issue is. They're calling it open borders when in fact, we're ramping up Trump-era policies that close the borders. It's completely unhinged from reality, but really the right wing has done a good job of swaying public opinion against refugees at the border and against immigration in general. So I think there's been, like I said, a real failure to articulate a positive vision. Just from an advocacy standpoint, we've been incredibly disappointed with the Biden administration. I've spent countless hours in stakeholder meetings trying to help, create some policies that could be more humanitarian and safe and orderly. But they've really kind of kowtowed to this right-wing pressure and just become, I would say, a lot closer. The policies look a lot more like Trump than we ever expected.
Can you?
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I mean, can you just expand on that point and how asymmetrical this has been since our immigration laws are really outdated, haven't been updated in a long time, and a lot of what the movement has been on the right, with some of these like administrative measures and Biden tripling down on Title 42. Just in the zooming out a bit, how outdated is this, and how much has the right had success in moving it in one direction over the past few decades?
Well, what tends to happen, even when there is some kind of movement on immigration in a positive direction, is the compromise is always border security, right? So we've seen Customs and Border Protection expand at an exponential pace over the past few decades. And really, the compromise is supposed to be easier legal immigration for better border security. But we haven't seen easier legal immigration, right? That part of the compromise doesn't come to fruition. And so what we've seen is just this really intense militarization of the border, this denigration of the right to seek asylum, right? And when we're talking about the law being outdated, the Refugee Convention is codified in federal US law. It, Sam mentioned earlier, if you come to the border and you ask for protection, you should get due process. Those laws are not being followed at all. So, I mean, my first ask would really be follow the law that exists, and then maybe we can work from there at fixing what needs to be fixed.
What seems to be really odd to me too is that, largely, Democrats aren't paying a price politically, it seems to me, for all the rhetoric that we hear about the open border and the craziness and the things are, the Republicans in Congress are very close to being able to sort of like move forward with attempting to impeach Mayorkas. Because presumably, like, he's just, he's pulled all the troops off the border as far as they're concerned, and there's nobody there, and it's just a sort of like wide open thing, and it's just a bizarre twisting of reality. Right. Democrats don't seem to have been necessarily paying a political price in the Southwest states per se, and yet the Biden administration makes these moves that they don't, that to crack down, that they're not getting any credit for anyways. Like, I don't understand the dynamic. It's very hard to follow what the political thinking is. Is it just that they have such myopia in the administration? They just want to avoid this issue to the extent that they can, that they just, or is there any sense that there's anybody like genuinely thinking from a political standpoint, that, like, what the dynamics are at play here? Because I think the best thing that could happen for immigrants is for them to try and impeach Mayorkas.
Yeah, I agree. Honestly, I mean, I think they've done a terrible job at, like I said, articulating a positive vision. This has just been, the politics have been so reactive, and they end up on the losing end. But I think what's important to remember is that border security is a bipartisan project. It always has been. I don't think there really is a right or left when it comes to border security. The point of all these policies is to keep Black and brown immigrants out of the United States. And so when you are looking from the perspective of, the Democrats are on the side of immigrants, it doesn't make sense. But when you understand and look back at the past few decades where both parties have increased the budget of Border Patrol, both parties have, supported really oppressive policies at the border, then of course it makes sense. And I think a lot of times too, this administration is using the, pressure from the right wing as an excuse to keep these policies. I've seen this working directly with DHS. When Title 42 is supposedly ending, they don't make any plans for it to end because they know the right-wing states are going to sue, and they're depending on that. And so when those, decisions come down from the courts, they're like, oh no, can't get rid of Title 42, but we know that they never actually planned for the end of it. So that's the dynamic I'm really seeing. They can kind of make excuses that they're opposed to right-wing policies to keep some of the base, the pro-immigrant base, kind of quiet, but in reality, I think they support those policies as well.
Erika Pinheiro, Executive Director of Otro Lado, thank you so much for your time today. Where can people get more information and support your organization?
So you can go to our website. It's alotrolado.org, and there's links to all of our social media there. And thank you so much for having me.
All right. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, folks, we're going to take a quick break. When we come back, Brian Mier, correspondent for teleSUR English and writer at Brasil Wire on January 8th, I guess. We'll be right back. We are back. Sam Seder, Emma Vigeland on the Majority Report. Want to welcome to the program Brian Mier. He is a correspondent for teleSUR English and a writer at Brasil Wire. Brian, thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Will you just give us a little bit of background? I mean, I think folks, our audience is fairly familiar with where we were on January 7th. But give us a little bit of background as to, there has been really almost, I don't know, close to a decade that has brought us to this point. Maybe, maybe closer to 8 years or something like that. But just walk us through some of those major points so that people have an understanding of where we are. And also please include U.S. involvement in this sort of like, I guess, inciting event that brought about ultimately what we saw.
Okay, well, starting in 2014, there was a joint anti-corruption investigation between the U.S. DOJ and a small district attorney general task force in Curitiba called Car Wash or Lava Jato. And what initially looked like a good anti-corruption investigation became weaponized and targeted against the Workers' Party, leading to illegitimate impeachment of Dilma Rousseff and the political imprisonment of Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, Lula, right? And what that really did was open the door for Bolsonaro to take power. So Lula has been fully exonerated. It's recognized that he was wrongly imprisoned. After Bolsonaro was elected, he immediately appointed the judge who had ruled both on the investigation against Lula and on the actual trial itself, Sergio Moro. He made him his justice minister. And together, this is already into the Trump years now, they visited the CIA headquarters together shortly after Bolsonaro took office. And so from that point forwards, we've noticed a very strong and close relationship between a group of American far-right operatives connected to Robert Mercer, like Steve Bannon, Jason Miller, Matthew Tyrmand, with a lot of free publicity from Tucker Carlson on Fox News, connecting the Bolsonaro family, mainly through their son Eduardo, Jair Bolsonaro's son Eduardo, who was actually at the War Council meeting in Washington, D.C. on January 5th, with this American far right. And so for the last 2 years, Jair Bolsonaro was threatening not to accept the results of the election. And they started about a year ago building this big lie style narrative, almost exactly the same to what Trump did in the United States, with a few differences, because in Brazil, it's all electronic voting. So they started arguing, Bolsonaro and people from the military who are close allies of his, because he's a former military captain himself, started weaving this narrative that the elections were going to be stolen, And so he appointed an auditing group from the army to audit the electronic voting. And even they couldn't find any evidence of fraud, even his own committee. But he refused. He was very slow to acknowledge the results of the election. And some of his top cabinet members also refused to acknowledge the results of the election. Different from January 6th, 2 days before the inauguration, Bolsonaro fled the country. He's afraid of going to jail now. I mean, he's committed so many crimes. There's over 140 impeachment requests against him that he kept buying off parts of Congress to not go through. But there are all these charges going up against him. So he fled, and they weren't strong enough to actually do this kind of thing that they did in the US on inauguration day, because hundreds of thousands of supporters of Lula came out to see the inauguration. So they waited until a week later, as everyone, this has probably been all over the news in the US and stuff, but basically January is vacation month in Brazil. Brasilia itself is a city full of bureaucrats, government employees, and most of them leave the city for the entire month. Plus it was on a Sunday, so it was an empty Sunday on the slowest month of the year, when around 10,000 of these people, who we now know were fleshed out with homeless people. Hundreds of the people they arrested turned out to be homeless people who were just getting paid to flesh out the crowd. They entered these empty government buildings And that's one of the key differences between, the U.S. event and the what happened in Brazil. But basically, it's the same script. And the problem that Bolsonaro and his allies, his cronies, are running into now is that Brazil has an entirely different legal system than the United States. So they took advice from all these far-right elites from the United States, from the private sector now, who don't speak Portuguese and don't know anything about the laws down here. So a bunch of these people are already getting arrested. Bolsonaro now, he's afraid of coming back to Brazil because he would be arrested if he tried to come back into the country right now.
He'd be in the Lulag, right? That's what they're calling
exactly,
it?
The Lulag, yeah. Ironically, these people who are literally trying to implement a fascist dictatorship like the ones we had in the 70s and 80s here, where they were torturing everybody. Now they're trying to act like this human rights violation is going on.
I want to, there's a lot I want to get to there. In addition to the sort of the history that has brought about a different legal system in Brazil, and the sort of the stakes being a little bit different, perhaps, than they are in the U.S. With this type of event. But I want to just go back to the DOJ involvement in Lava Jato. How unique, is it conceivable that in a different a parallel universe, it's helpful to have the DOJ associated with an anti-corruption investigation? How much of that indicates that the position of the United States was, we would like to get rid of essentially Lula and essentially eject the People's Party from power, essentially the Workers' Party?
Well, unfortunately, we now have 7 terabytes of hacked Telegram conversations between the prosecutors, sometimes with Judge Sergio Moro. The Intercept with Glenn Greenwald, they only released a tiny amount of it, little by little over the course of 9 months. And they waited until the COVID crisis was breaking and Glenn was already on his way out of Intercept with some other journalists that released the information about the US involvement. But we know, for example, that there was a team of 18 FBI agents that was secretly, outside of the terms of the actual, partnership between the DOJ and the public prosecutors, which went under the ambit of the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act, which is a law that enables American FBI and DOJ to operate in other countries if it involves a company that's done business in the United States. We know that these FBI meetings were outside of the terms of that partnership contract. Every 15 days, they met with the prosecutors during the time that they were persecuting Lula, giving them advice on things like how to use coerced plea bargain testimonies, which were a new thing in Brazilian law, and how to deal with media strategies and things like that. And in 2017, Kenneth Blanco, who was the acting Assistant Attorney General of the United States, gave a speech at the Atlantic Council, which you can see. I mean, me and Michael Brooks talked about this back in the day, right? But he's bragging about, it's on YouTube still. I mean, he's bragging about how they helped arrest Lula, how they helped, go after Lula. Lula had been convicted, but he wasn't in jail yet in 2017. So it looks like the U.S. was actually, involved in that, which is the ironic thing now is that the Biden administration has been helping. So politics, it just shows you how crazy politics is.
That's what's so interesting, though, right, is that the initial involvement, seemingly, of the DOJ is much more consistent with United States involvement in Latin America for the past many decades. And is it fair to say that this divergence, where the Biden administration is being supportive of Lula, is more about domestic politics here, given the Bannon connection and the far right consistency with how Trump operated and tried to overturn the election, and how Bolsonaro used the same playbook and honestly some of the same players.
Exactly. I mean, it's ironic. 3 days after Dilma Rousseff was thrown out of office, most other countries in Latin America refused to recognize the new government. But Joe Biden met with the coup president Michel Temer at that time and said he had full support from the U.S. Now,
Joe Biden as vice president.
As vice president, yeah. He said, I'm giving you a message from President Obama. Now, his administration is giving a lot of support to the Lula administration. And the reason for this isn't like what some weird conspiracy Twitter people are trying to allege or something, that, you know, like Lula's a pawn now of US or something. It's because Bolsonaro was so stupid that he got involved in a political battle that had nothing to do with him up in the US. Like, why would you take sides on something like that? He was the last world leader to recognize Biden's electoral victory. After Biden took office, the Biden administration sent down Jake Sullivan, the CIA director as well, different government officials to try and work with the Bolsonaro administration. They were still going to give him the benefit of the doubt. And at some point, they apparently just said, this is ridiculous. You know, we can't allow Bannon and, you know, whoever else, the Koch and Robert Mercer and these like neo-fascist or Sebastianists, whatever you want to call them, right-wing, you know, elites from the United States have such a big toehold in the Western Hemisphere, because Brazil's the second biggest country in population and GDP in this hemisphere. So it would just be for pure, you know, self-interest politically. It would be dumb for the Biden administration to have supported Bolsonaro, you know, or to not be supporting Lula at this moment. So it's just like this convergence. It reminds me of World War II, when the Roosevelt administration did a lot of good things in Brazil, helped Brazil start a national steel industry, because at this point the U.S. needed Brazil as an ally against Hitler and everything. It just seems like this convergence where all of a sudden, and it's not just the U.S., but like almost every government in the world is supporting Lula right now. Even neo-fascist Italy gave a solidarity statement in support of Lula, which, you know, both. Go ahead. Sorry.
Well, is that because Bolsonaro is just that sort of like obnoxious? I mean, on some level, there's a weird lack of integrity from the forces within the United States that were afraid of a more socialistic, let's say, administration in Brazil, because of what it might portend in terms of U.S. corporate interests there, or it might spread to other parts of Latin America. It's a weird lack of integrity to not maintain that position for more than a couple of years, because, you know, you don't like, because Bolsonaro is just incredibly obnoxious and hanging out with people you don't like. I mean, I'm happy for it, but it is pretty amazing that it's crazy. They have the ability to go against whatever these interests were 6 years ago now on these grounds. It may also be a function of just how much the Steve Bannons and the Trump people have alienated themselves from those interests as well.
I mean, look, if you look at like the Cold War, the U.S. government allowed or, you know, permitted or whatever much better labor laws and things like that than after the Cold War. And, you know, I feel like at this point, moderate social democracy, which is really all that the Lula administration ever was and all it's promising, is better than like straight up fascism. And if you look back at like the history of Germany in the 30s, you see this too. At the beginning, a lot of the industrialists, bourgeois elites or whatever, they kind of supported Hitler coming to power. Mm-hmm. But then it got to this point where, like, wait a second, this guy is so crazy, he's damaging our business interests.
Right.
And I think with Bolsonaro, the local business elites wanted the PT, the Workers' Party, out, But they're realizing now, I mean, a lot of his top allies are back in the Lula camp. They're realizing now that he was just like, it might have looked good for the first year or something, but essentially he's completely ruined Brazil's reputation internationally. Brazil had the highest per capita death rate from COVID, and there's a real serious risk to the Amazon right now. So it's just not sustainable. Like, of course they would want someone more, I would say, neoliberal or something than Lula if they had a choice. But in this case, moderate social democracy is much better for the US, even US business interests, for the Brazilian businessmen, things like that, than a deranged lunatic, which is what Bolsonaro is.
How much did Bolsonaro's COVID policies add to that sense of this guy's a lunatic?
I think a lot, especially inside Brazil, because so many people lost relatives and stuff. I mean, my wife lost 12 relatives to COVID.
Oh, jeez.
And he was telling people that the vaccine caused AIDS.
Well, he was. I think we might be 6 months away from that, frankly, with some of the people in this country, in terms of they're making that argument. I want to go back to why they chose now. I understand. I mean, we have both the U.S. and Russia, if I understand this, who are willing to provide some measure of security for the inauguration. It ended up there was, like you say, hundreds of thousands of people came out. Would have been much harder to pull off something like they did on January 8th. But why? What was the theory behind the assault when nobody's in the buildings? What did, if somebody's paying homeless people to do this, there's obviously, this is not like a spontaneous, just sort of outpouring of angst and, the election integrity concerns. I mean, I have some question too as to what Bolsonaro's role was. I just remember in the week or two before January 8th, we were looking at video of what's this dude walking around Orlando for? He's in a
VR headset, playing games.
He's playing games in a VR headset. He's walking around in a gated community. He's getting filmed in a grocery store. I mean, it really felt to me at the time it just seemed incredibly strange. This is not the behavior of somebody who just lost something, who wants to be why does he want to be seen this way? And on January 8th, I had an alternate theory as to why he wanted to be seen that way, because he wanted to be clear, I wasn't there, and I don't know, that's speculation on my part, but I just thought it was really weird beforehand. This is not the behavior of someone who lost an election and is mad about it, and they're going grocery shopping. I don't know. I found that strange. So, two-part question. One, why, when it was completely empty, what was supposedly going to happen, do you think they were hoping would happen at that moment? And to what extent is there evidence that Bolsonaro was aware of what was going to happen? And presumably, if he's aware of it, he may be involved in somewhat in the planning.
If he was aware of it while he was president and didn't do anything, then he's guilty of a felony administrative omission, right? But first of all of that stuff of him walking around he he was eating KFC on the day of the event, I think that was all staged. It was all coached by the Bannon type people, these operatives, make him look like a simple man. It's a kind of fascist thing they do these days, I guess. I mean, he's a multimillionaire. And but I think the plan, as we know about it now, in part because the federal police found written plan in the house of Bolsonaro's former justice minister, who was in Orlando on the 8th. He had been appointed to be justice minister of Brasilia after Lula took over by the very right-wing governor of Brasilia. And he got the position, and immediately flew up to Orlando, Florida, too. The plan was that they thought there would be enough sympathy in the army that if they caused this big commotion, they had the military police on their side, they had the governor on their side. The military police basically just opened the doors for them. There's all these images of them taking selfies with the coup, the rioters or terrorists, whatever you want to call them, taking selfies and things like that. They were all on the side. So the plan was that Lula would panic and declare a state of emergency. And this would allow the military, the army, to come in. And the army would, in their minds, switch sides and just take over the government, and there would be a military coup.
They would do something like, we need to have a new election because there's clearly some problems here, or we need to, Bolsonaro, we need to bring back his acting president and for just a year, and then we'll figure stuff out. One of those type of things. Exactly.
And it's similar to what one of Trump's advisors was suggesting that he'd do in December 2020, actually. Yep. It makes me wonder if there was any...
Wonder where he got that from, right?
Exactly.
You made the point that the legal system is different in Brazil. One of the things that I have seen, and it's no secret that that Glenn Greenwald. You mentioned The Intercept and him getting the Lava Jato hack essentially. And there's been some questions, and you've written about the questions surrounding why only certain aspects of this leak was sort of published, and that the hacker himself was sort of disappointed that Greenwald, in the way that Greenwald released things and how much of it he released things. And so, one of my sources for what's going on in Brazil is Glenn Greenwald in English, as opposed to in Portuguese. And he has been suddenly sounding the alarm of authoritarianism in Brazil, and speaking about what's happening in Brazil in the same way you would about the United States. But there is no First Amendment in Brazil. Like in the same way, like there's no First Amendment in England. Like the democracy, the structure of democracy within the context of Brazil is constructed in a very different way than it is in the United States. There's more than one way to approach this. And when you talk about judges there who are overreaching, they may look like they're overreaching from the context of a U.S. Perspective, but from a Brazilian perspective, they have a different function. And that, will you walk us through that, and also how those differences in the legal system and the structure of democracy in Brazil made the calculations of what would happen different than what would have happened in the United States?
Yeah, first of all, Brazil they're using, in a very American style, it's not just Greenwald, but it's other people like Matthew Tyrmand and other people affiliated with Fox and with Tucker Carlson. They're weaving this narrative of this one judge, and it's very convenient for them because he's bald and he looks a little bit like Dr. Evil or something like that, or Lex Luthor. So they're making him out to be this supervillain, like this Bond villain who's engaged in overreach or something like that. What it really is that Brazil has an electoral court system that was established in 1932 that oversees all of the elements of the elections, from the tallying of the votes to creating the laws regarding campaign financing, election fraud, and enforcing the laws. So they've always had the ability to order arrests of people for committing election fraud. And so what's happening is that Greenwald and others, they're concentrating the entire system. It's one of the elements of the Brazilian rule of law, and they're treating it as if it's this one person. And it's not this court system that's making its own investigations and collective decisions, and he's just the president of that court right now. He's because the president is always also a Supreme Court justice. So he's a Supreme Court justice, and he was appointed president for like a 2-year term of the Superior Electoral Court. So he's just doing his job. After the elections in 2018, the electoral courts ruled that all kinds of fraud had been committed on social media, they didn't exercise their power to completely cancel the election of Bolsonaro, which they could have, but they said, we're going to guarantee that it doesn't happen again. And so when the election cycle started, remembering in 2018, for example, the Bolsonaro people used big data targeting to bombard evangelical Christians with false information that the presidential candidate Fernando Haddad was a pedophile and things like that. I mean, that's illegal in Brazil. It's illegal to do these kinds of things because, segueing into the legal element, there was a brutal dictatorship. Brazil was the country that had the largest Nazi party outside of Europe in the 1930s. And there was an associated fascist movement called integralism that was much, much larger, that held an attempted coup d'etat in 1937. And a lot of their ideals permeated the brutal military dictatorship that we had down here from 1964 to 1985. So when Brazil finally got to write a new constitution in 1988, they took a lot of influence from the German constitution on how they deal with Nazism and far-right groups and things like that. And so instead of this 220-year-old concept of free speech absolutism or something, the way it's interpreted in the US Constitution, they have a concept called the harmony of rights. All human rights are important, but one human right can't be used at the expense of another human right. So for example, you don't have the freedom of speech in Brazil to argue that Jews should be exterminated, or that, you can't publish an article saying gay people are trying to exterminate the human race or something, because that incites violence against another group of people, and they have a right to live their lives in peace, right? And in that sense, actually belonging to a Nazi party, or even saying that you support Nazism, is also a crime in Brazil. And so when this blogger, this YouTuber guy, said on the air that he thought Brazil should have its own Nazi party, he was fired. And then Glenn stepped in and helped the guy get a new job. And now this guy, on the day of the coup attempt, he was cheerleading for them. And so the electoral courts canceled his social media accounts, or temporarily, for now pending investigation. That's totally legal in Brazil. The idea of importing the United States conception of any law into another legal setting is imperialist. It's like, it's just an imperialist thing to do. And I feel like the big tech billionaires are in on this idea of exporting the US vision of free speech absolutism, because it helps reduce their liability in other countries.
Right. Right.
And so I feel like it's an entire campaign. It's not just like Glenn Greenwald or something like that. Because then you immediately have like Elon Musk agreeing with him.
I think they're doing a similar thing here, and we should also say, like, the maximalist view of the First Amendment, that is also not necessarily the tradition in this country. I mean, the saying, you can't yell fire in a crowded theater, has been problematically applied, within this country in ways that have inhibited leftists, because they're undermining, U.S. war efforts at times, or whatever it is. But that as a doctrine, it does make some sense, and both in the context of U.S. law, but also in terms of like respecting other people's rights. If you walk up to me with a gun, because you have a Second Amendment right, and you put it in my face, that could inhibit my free speech. And so, theoretically, it's impossible to escape this balance of things. And Brazil has sort of has edified that concept legally far more than we have adopted it here. But again, I mean, your point's made. And so with that said, in terms of like assessing the response by Brazil's sort of elite, or whatever the terms are banding around, and I have no doubt that this is not just Glenn Greenwald. This is not just a single voice. There is a concerted effort, obviously, to impose a perspective on Brazil I think it's happening in the U.S. too, but in Brazil, it's that much more of divergent from what the structure of the system is. What was it that they miscalculated in terms of like Lula's response or the system's response based upon the legal system there that inhibited their planned coup?
Well, Lula is one of the most, as Michael Brooks probably said dozens of times on this program, Lula is one of the most clever and savvy politicians, anywhere. And he kind of had a feeling that might be what they were doing. So what he did, first we had this situation where people were running amok in the government buildings, taking a crap on filming themselves taking a crap on someone's desk or something and streaming on the internet.
They also took that from us. Yeah.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I pointed it out to show the similarities, right?
Yeah.
Like it's just imported. That's not part of Brazilian culture. That's not an element of Brazilian culture to do that kind of thing,
I'm not sure it's part of American culture either, to be honest with you, but maybe.
It's definitely more American.
It's not like typical American behavior. Let's say that. Let's put it that way. But basically, Lula was like, so first the governor was like, oh, my security secretary, he's left the country. It's his fault. He's fired because the governor is a staunch Bolsonaro ally. So he was trying to protect his hide. But then Lula gave the governor like another hour and a half to try and solve the problem. And when it was still going on 3 hours into it, he issued a decree saying, well, that's that. The governor's lost control of the security apparatus in Brasilia. Federal government's moving in. And in 20 minutes, and they issued an arrest warrant for the former security director of Brasilia, who was with Bolsonaro in Florida. Within 20 minutes, all three buildings were completely cleared out by federal police and civil police, just showing how easy it would have been for the military police to have stopped them, right? Most of the people there were over the age of 50. It was a lot of like angry white Brazilians in their 60s and stuff. I mean, it wasn't like, but they're infiltrated within that group were people who were like, knew exactly where to go, who broke into the intelligence agency, stole all of their weapons and things like that. So it was coordinated. But anyway, within 20 minutes, it's cleared out without needing the military. So the base commander in Brasilia had 2,500 troops mobilized, saying, oh yeah, we're ready to help out. But he seems like one of these rogue military guys who was like really hoping there would be a coup. And so he wasn't called on. They weren't authorized to act. So I thought that was a very clever move. And now
so Lula preempted the opportunity for the military to get in and control the situation, essentially.
He knows how the military thinks. He's one of the people who helped bring down the first military dictatorship.
Right.
Yeah.
His brother was brutally tortured during the dictatorship. He was arrested by them. So he understands their way of thinking. That's why I think he did what he did.
And just returning to Bolsonaro for a second, if he's hiding out in the United States, right? There's been like dozens of Democratic lawmakers who have implored the Biden administration and Blinken to force him out of the United States and send him back to Brazil. And basically Blinken's response has been, well, once he gets charged, we will, extradite him like any other private citizen, essentially. But what's your read on that? It seems like now that he has these new buddies, he is trying to get a safe haven within an American context where he might be a little less culpable, or be able to be a free man. Where Lula, is it in him and in his interest to use some of the laws that you described to bring charges against Bolsonaro?
Well, the Justice Minister, Flavio Dino, he just requested that the courts include Bolsonaro in the investigation into the coup attempt. So Bolsonaro is officially under investigation right now. And he's a suspect in all kinds of other crimes. In fact, the federal police were planning on bringing him in for questioning on January 1st for his comments about the vaccine causing AIDS or turning people into alligators or helping women grow beards, which was ruled in an investigation in Congress to have, exacerbated the number of deaths in the country. So he's got charges against him for a bunch of things. And I bet they'll just go through the regular procedures and file an extradition request at some point. But it would be nice if, the State Department always denies people visas.
Mm-hmm.
They're always like denying people from Brazil who want to take vacation in the US, just not giving them their visas for whatever reason. It seems almost arbitrary sometimes. Because, why can't they just, he's been given 30 days for a change of status because he got in on a diplomatic visa. And now it looks like some businessmen in Florida who are Brazilian are trying to hire him as a public speaker for Brazilian events so that he can get some kind of work visa or something. I don't see why they couldn't just deny his request for change of status. I think that's what these members of Congress are kind of suggesting. And I just want to say that at the height of Lava Jato and everything, when the DOJ was working with, the people in Curitiba to take down the Workers' Party, there's a group of around 12 to 25, varying in numbers, members of Congress who always stood in solidarity with Dilma Rousseff and Lula, a lot because of the labor unions. The AFL-CIO never gave up on them, always pressuring their lawmakers to stand in solidarity. And these are people like Hank Johnson, Rocana, Raul Grijalvia, Susan Wild, and they've been doing some fantastic work. I just think it's worth recognizing that what's happening with US government support right now isn't entirely because of like opportunism or electoral self-interest on the part of the Democratic Party. There are some people, Ilhan Omar is another one.
Bernie in the Senate too, right? Had that resolution.
Also, yeah, of course. Yeah. Bernie, the whole time. Never bought into that Lula's corrupt narrative.
Well, Brian Mier, really appreciate your time today. We'll catch back up with you and we'll see where these develops. But really appreciate your sort of explaining this entire sort of episode to us. People can see you on teleSUR English and read you at Brasil Wire. Thanks so much for your time today. Really appreciate it.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Yeah, thank you. And also right on Left Reckoning last week, right? Yep. You could check that out.
Yep. Thanks, Brian.
Look at me.
The Matt Leck Media Universe.
Yep.
Yes. Damn.
Thanks, Brian.
Thanks so much, Brian.
All right, folks. We're going to take a quick break, head into the fun half of the program. The number will be 646-257-3920 today. That's the number we're going to be answering today. Just a reminder, it's your support that makes this show possible. You can become a member at jointhemajority.report.com. AM Quickie is moving to a paid subscription model, or at least for part of it. So you get a little bit of it every week, but if you want all of it, sign up so we can, at the very least, support it. Yesterday was the first paid edition. People are loving it. You can sign up for it at amquickie.com, or you can do it through the app. The app is completely free, majorityapp.com. It's got all the links. You can, if you become a member, you can IM us. Remember, it is your memberships that allow the show to survive and thrive. Also, don't forget justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee, tea, or chocolate. Use the coupon code majority, get 10% off. And on Sunday night, blessedly, there is no Giants game. Emma and I are going to be joining Matt and Griscom from Left Reckoning and the guys from This Is Revolution, or at least Jason and Ben Burgess at the Cutting Room, which is like a 30. And Boskar is going to be there. 32nd Street. I don't know, somewhere in Midtown, 32nd Street.
The Cutting Room.
Oh, there it is.
It's like right in the middle. It's
44 East 32nd Street, right next to the Empire State Building, or near enough there. Still tickets available this Sunday night. For Emma and Sam joining the This Is Revolution. Jason, and give them argument, Ben Burgess, and me and Griscom.
It's going to be fun, folks. Check it out. Emma, what's happening on, today's not Thursday. What's happening on ESVN?
Yesterday was a very fun episode. We did a breakdown of every game over Wild Card Weekend. I went kind of nuts talking about the Giants. Also,
what were you drinking?
I had a high noon. Yeah, I tried a new flavor, passion fruit. They're like they're like beers, but it's just a hard seltzer.
Passion being the operative word.
Yes, I was exactly. It was in the spirit. And we also just talked about some of the recent firings of offensive coordinators, Byron Leftwich, Joe Lombardi. Especially Joe Lombardi deserved it, but being scapegoated for terrible performances by their head coaches, among other things. On Thursday, I wanted to talk about Provorov, the Philadelphia Flyers defenseman who refused to wear the Pride warm-up jersey for the NHL, despite it being in his contract, citing religious obligations and just being a bigot. We'll talk about that on Thursday, among other things. youtube.com/ESVN show.
Matt.
Oh, yeah. Last night, in addition to the live show this Sunday, I talked to Robert Skvarla about the church committee, why we shouldn't maybe expect Jim Jordan to be the next Frank Church, and a little bit of JFK stuff.
What?
So,
what?
Yeah.
Seriously?
Not quite the same sort of pedigree, if you can believe it.
Honestly, this is why I have a problem with referring to it as the new church committee. Because it's not.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not even structured that way. It's not even like its mission is not even that. It's
closer to HUAC.
Yes, right.
Yeah, honestly.
Yeah.
Honestly. And that is I am certainly open to the possibility that Jim Jordan will be concerned at rooting out spying on Muslims and trading of information between the NSA and the FBI and the CIA, and
he's finally ready to fight institutional corruption.
Yeah, and the idea of buying information that they wouldn't otherwise be able to secure in terms of spying on us. I'm really looking forward to that Jim Jordan effort, but I think calling it the new church committee, sort of it's a little bit early to refer to it that way. But go ahead. Sorry.
Oh, no, that's it. So check that out, patreon.com/leftreckoning. But yeah, go check out my discussion with Robert.
Folks, see you in the fun half.
You are in for it.
All right, folks, 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
Are you ready?
Who sent us
this? Alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you could imagine.
The alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just wanna degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back.
I take all of it to my throat.
Alpha males are back.
Snowflake says what?
The alpha males are back.
You are a madman.
And the alpha males are back.
Oh no, Sam Seder! What a fucking nightmare!
Bring back DJ.
Yeah, or a couple of them. Just put them in rotation.
DJ Denner.
Well, the problem with those is they're 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break.
That's fucking nonsense. You see white people doing drugs, they look worse than normal white people, and all white people look disgusting.
And the alpha males...
Psych. Fuck them. Snowflake says what?
What?
Snowflake says what?
A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. Okay, I'm making stupid money. Hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank.
All lives matter. Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black African. And the alpha males are black. And the Africans are back.
When you see Donald Trump out there, doesn't a little part of you think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists? Keeping it 100.
Can't knock the hustle.
Come on, fuck 'em. Things I do for the bigger game plan. By the way, it's my birthday. Happy birthday to me, Jew boy.
I have a thought experiment for you.
And the alpha males are back. Africans are black. Alpha males are black. Africans are back.
Come on. Come on. Someone needs to pay the price for blasphemy around here.
I am a total pussy.
Back.
We are back, ladies and gentlemen. It is the fun half of the program. I will unleash the phone system, as it were, and read some IMs. New shirt. Yes, Fato. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Android app ain't working. Anyone else's Android app keep crashing? It streams for about 5 seconds, buffers, and then stops playing. Do I need to update again? Try updating. I don't know. Cinema has serious business. Cinema has freed herself of that broken two-party system to be useless all by herself. Tomo Link. Happy Friends Day Wednesday here, folks. In Britain, Keir Starmer has unveiled his plan for the NHS. Through an op-ed in the Daily Telegraph, a well-known pro-Tory newspaper. In the op-ed, Starmer essentially played into right-wing talking points. What a surprise. Also, Emma, congratulations on how well the Giants have done this season. I have my own exciting sports news, which I'm hoping to call into ESPN soon and bore everyone silly with. Charlie Scher. Who did Cinema steal that shag carpet with to make her outfit? Chris from Taiwan. The new Android app is excellent. Thanks. Dave from Jamaica. I know this is petty, but Cinema fit makes no sense.
Yeah, she was also wearing like either high top boots or Converse. It was hard to tell.
I mean, what a life that must be to like be the dressed down person in an elite sort of.
I mean, I'm in agreement with the dressing down, but like the reason she does it is to make herself seem edgy or like have some unique aesthetic.
To like the world's most powerful vampires, too.
Yeah, exactly.
Dave from Jamaica says they hire homeless. Very disgusting. He's talking about the Bolsonaros who assaulted the Capitol. The right always accuses people of hiring crisis actors. They literally did. Sakarobo. Sam had to give Saul the bad news that all of his big crossword wealth is tied up in Siegfried and Roy shirts. Consequently, that's what he'll be receiving for his birthday. Yes. Net wealth is not just the gross, but it's also the liabilities. And I have sadly tied up all of my assets in Siegfried and Roy t-shirts. Have you read my email? That outfit makes Cinema the main character of the Kristen cinematic universe. Street Beats. Cinema is making the point for the Voting Rights Act to have been passed in her Davos argument. If the district lines were drew by an independent commissions, the radical right may very well have had no leverage. Slap it to me. The internet says Matt's worth is almost 10 times as much as you, and I have no reason to think otherwise. He's a much smarter investor. 3-day weekend. I'm sorry, but during your introduction, you did not mention Casey from Tennessee segment during the fun half. What time will he be on so I can tune in? Yorkshire Sunshine. Sam, it's Silly Cy Bin. Thank you. I will forget that. I already have.
It's not
Spider Wagon Ship. It's Sil-a-Cybin. If you see this while the guest is still on, ask him why the electoral court wasn't able to stop Bolsonaro the first time. It probably was just surprised, by sort of like what happened in the same way that we were. Daredevil, Sam, it's pronounced psilocybin. You guys are bastards. Adjusted 360 Android app updated on its own. I'm glad I did it. Thank you, Kyle. Declaration of Cinema Independence. Cinema Independence. Is she going to run it as an independent against that Thiel weirdo? If the Dems have someone to run against her, what are the chances of a good outcome? this is one of the concerns and one of the smart sort of plays that cinema did by, it's essentially, she's got a gun to the hostage's head and says, like, you can join the race, but you're going to split the vote between us and you're going to elect a Republican.
I think it should be illegal to go through a party apparatus to get power and then immediately after that election be like, actually, that stuff was bullshit. I'm on my own. You should have to give up your seat then.
I don't know if I agree with that.
Guys want to expand on that?
Well, I mean, I just think it's like, it's this ludicrous idea of like, oh, it's her right to do this. It's like, no, I think there should be some party discipline around here.
I mean, the party can expel her, but the party is not, has no statutory authority.
I mean, I understand like the limitations, but I also think just in people's understanding, like nobody should be applauding like what she did. And it's the same way people should be like, Hillary Clinton has the right to say whatever she wants about the election. It's like she has the right to do that, but she shouldn't be doing it, and everybody should understand it as like bad.
I agree with that. Like everybody, I mean, but who is praising cinema for doing that? Just right wingers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So her reason to vote no on ignoring the filibuster is because it exists. You know what's more important than the guardrail of institutions than a dumb loophole that's not even specifically talked about in founding documents? Democracy, indeed. Limba Bazalik. Can Mayor Pete, under auspices of the Department of Transportation, unilaterally ban Tesla's self-driving software? And if so, why hasn't this been done already? I don't understand how there is no legal statutory framework for saying cars must have drivers.
Yeah.
Like, it's impossible for me to imagine that doesn't exist. I mean, I think it's like,
look at the way we regulated drones. Like, you can't do this with a drone. You can't do that with a drone. Like, I mean, and we do this with cars too. Like, certain cars get put off the road from not being street legal.
I mean, you could, I think this is a state by state thing. I mean, It's conceivable to me that you could say, you can't use a self-driving feature on federal highways.
Right. But I mean, in California,
the federal government, like, we're going to withhold federal highway funds if you allow self-driving cars anywhere.
Yeah. California, though, given like their connection with the tech industry in particular, is probably susceptible to that kind of like pressure, corruption, whatever you want to call it, to not put that on the books.
Switch till a kid gets hit, I guess.
That whoops just happened in San Francisco.
No gods, king, sorcerer mascots. High-fiving my rich friends over keeping a filibuster so poor people keep getting fed into the grinder of late-stage capitalism, a true independent move. I'm starting to think that going independent is almost a more honest acknowledgement by cinema than her political project is entirely itself focused. Holy Jesus Christ. Can you recommend a good book on the history of Latin America? I think it's too broad. I mean, honestly.
The Open Veins of Latin America is the one that people often cite by Eduardo Galeano. That'd be probably a good place to start.
J-Man Raps. Hey guys, wanted to shout out Matt for calling out anti-vax, pro-COVID deaths cult scumbags like Jimmy Dore. Also shout out to Julia Doubleday, left his best. Let's start off this clip. This is not an ideological difference that I have with Jimmy Dore in this clip. This is a difference in like, what is your responsibility when you platform somebody and then sit there and agree with a guy who is talking about data based upon polls he's taking on his Nextdoor account. I kid you not. Listen to this absolute garbage. And Jimmy Dore, I think, is absolutely convinced in his, and I imagine it's enhanced by something that comes in a bottle or a container in terms of like, why he's so convinced that he's right about these things. He puts out like lists. I think I saw a tweet that you had, Matt.
Yeah.
Where he was like, I've been proven right about all of these things. And in fact, not the case at all.
No.
Just even the idea that the vaccine is, and all these talk about these excess deaths, real doctors, and real epidemiologists and real statisticians are blowing holes in this every day. They just don't now have the amplification because, frankly, the COVID deniers, the people who wanted to make sure that we were back to work,
the Koch brothers,
and that U.S. business was not in any way hindered by this, have won, essentially.
Yeah, the National Restaurant Association won.
There is, if you read into like sort of the various corners of the medical profession, where you have experts like cardiovascular experts and neurological experts and experts of all kinds, they are all seeing implications of people being infected with COVID in far reaches of the body, systems of the body, organs, cardiovascular, like I say, neurological. We have yet to really fully grasp the implications of getting COVID and of getting COVID multiple times and of getting COVID multiple times without being vaccinated. Aside from the 1.1 million deaths. And so this type of stuff is incredibly irresponsible. And the idea that you would just sort of like sit there and nod when a guy is citing a Twitter poll. Check this out.
Oh, yeah.
Because we look at the VAERS data and we think...
I should say like who this guy
VAERS
is.
data already.
Yeah, VAERS data, right? VAERS data is just a completely like... it's like putting a suggestion box in a mall, but it's, complaints.
Yeah.
And this guy's going to say that the CDC has an algorithm where they assume there's a certain percentage of the VAERS, signifies a certain percentage or whatnot. And I don't even know if that's true, but 2 years ago, no one knew what the VAERS thing was. It wasn't all of a sudden a
politicized database.
A politicized database where you could go express your entire loathing of the libs by putting something in VAERS.
Or even your anxiety because you've had it primed from you by charlatans like Jimmy Dore that the vaccines are unsafe. So anything any sort of weird symptom you have, you might just throw it on VAERS just to be safe.
Exactly. Who is Steve Kirsch? This is the guy who's on there.
It says he's an American entrepreneur that has started several companies and was one of two people who independently invented the optical mouse.
Okay.
All right. Just so that I want to make sure that we have his credentials.
Medical.
Because we look at the VAERS data and we think it looks like 500,000 people have been killed. But that clearly has to be wrong because the CDC says nobody's been killed. Maybe, a few people with AstraZeneca and, but man, not very many people have been killed. And we're thinking like, 500,000. So we're kind of, one of us is wrong. So like one of the questions is, hey, there are over 15,000 excess deaths in the VAERS system. And the VAERS system is underreported by a factor of 41, which you can verify because we use the exact same calculation techniques that the CDC has written about and has used in the past. It's just that they won't use them now. And so
Sorry,
it
pause
takes 41 times.
Probably because the algorithm is different. Say, for instance, you're doing measles vaccines in 2011 versus a giant global pandemic and vaccination effort. Those are different contexts, so maybe the algorithm changes a little bit. Just fatuous flim-flam.
But there's no actual proof that he's using the same algorithm, right? And that the data set that he is accessing via VAERS is in any way what the officials who cull this data and have an understanding of what's reputable and what isn't, and researches that, There's no verifiable information that he's using the same.
And these people are playing. They're the best defense is a good offense. They're going on offense because what they have been doing with regards to excess deaths is downplaying them, which have been happening all throughout this pandemic. Because guess what? Coronavirus has been killing people after, like, those cardiac events go up. That spike happens after the coronavirus, and it levels off after people start getting vaccinated. That's what these people are trying to obscure right now.
Same calculation techniques that the CDC has written about and has used in the past. It's just that they won't use them now. And so when you take 41 times 15,000, you get 600,000 deaths. And so my question to the CDC is, hey, guys, if the vaccine didn't kill those people, then what did?
Cool.
And nobody in the entire world can answer that question. Jimmy.
And so that's
Pretty sure we can.
Yeah.
There's some notion that he's arguing. It's almost hard to follow his argument in the sense that, like, he is making up a straw man that there's 600,000 excess deaths that he is calculating through the VAERS system by imposing an algorithm that doesn't necessarily, that isn't a constant used by the CDC. And then he's saying, like, well, if we can't figure out how those deaths happened, then what was it?
We can't actually verify.
Like, but we don't even know that those deaths actually happened.
No, it's like a quadruple layered bullshit sandwich. One is that he's using the same algorithm. Two, that he has the same data set that the CDC uses. Three, that the VAERS data that he's using is verifiable and true. And then he gets this number, and we're supposed to take that at face value.
Sorry, excess deaths are calculated by like deaths, and not like an extrapolation of VAERS data through like that. That's ridiculous.
Continue.
Those people. Then what did? And nobody in the entire world can answer that question. Jimmy.
And so that's the question. That's the question we've been asking on this show. Dr. John Campbell's been asking on his show.
Another quack.
A lot of people are now asking this question. How do you account for the excess deaths? Because the establishment says they're not coming from COVID. So if they're not coming from COVID, why are there all these excess deaths? And so nobody knows why.
Okay, so I went on Nextdoor and I wrote, hey, looking for success stories.
We should just say there was a cut there. We just want to be clear. But he's talking about, he went on Nextdoor.
Mm-hmm.
Just so you're clear on what Nextdoor is. It is like a neighborhood chat board.
Where, people
it's like Facebook.
Scare themselves about crime.
It's like Facebook, but even less representative of anything scientific.
Yeah, more about racist fear.
From COVID, why are there all these excess deaths? And so nobody knows why.
Okay, so I went on Nextdoor and I wrote, hey, looking for success stories on how well the vax is going. Anybody know of any success stories at all? And I got lots of likes, and I got not a single response.
Wow.
Can you believe that?
Oh my God.
Have you even heard of any success stories? I mean, is there a...
This is like discovering the atom. This is like a scientific breakthrough on par with discovering the atom. I mean, like, honestly, really, he had the initial data, and then he verified it with the Nextdoor like to comment ratio.
I'm trying to think of like what the success stories would look like for the vaccine. Like, how would you prove? Okay, for instance, I have been around. I've been exposed to people with COVID, and I got it in April, but I've been exposed. I've been, out and about much more so, and been exposed, at least to my knowledge, more in the past 2 months. My friends got it. My kid got it. And I didn't get it. Is that a success story? My daughter who got
it's because
COVID.
it's a fake virus and it doesn't even really exist. So you're never going to get it to begin with. That's the premise, is that you guys don't think COVID is actually dangerous. That's the only way you can have this conversation without like having your brain fall out of your head, is if you believe that.
Yeah, I mean, it's all just garbage. It's all just garbage. Is there any more to this? And we should say, like, my daughter was testing positive for only like 3 or 4 days. And is that a function of the vaccine, that she didn't get very sick at all? I don't know. And but I should go on Nextdoor and find out. The idea that you would base anything off of a poll with the people you are friends with on Nextdoor is insane.
Yeah.
You know who's not friends with that dude? Anybody who thinks COVID is real.
Right, exactly. They know where he's coming from. That's why they're not going to comment on his dumb shit and just they're going to put a like on it.
Of course. Yeah. That's like, like Gavin McInnes going like, I went on Nextdoor and I said, who here thinks that white people aren't oppressed? And nobody answered.
Is
there any more?
Yeah, the next part is the Twitter poll part.
Okay. Oh yeah. Okay. Here we go. The Twitter poll.
Stories on how well the vax is going. Anybody know of any success stories at all?
Millions of lives saved.
And I got lots of likes, and I got not a single response.
Whoa!
Can you believe that? Have you heard any? Have you even heard of any success stories? I mean, is there a? Yeah, and I'll give you another anecdote, which is I asked people, did you know someone who died? And if they died, that they died from COVID, and were they vaccinated? And you'll never believe this. The exact same percentage of people who died from COVID in the vaccinated was the same as the percentage of people who died from COVID in the unvaccinated.
Now, this is in your own unofficial poll you did on Next.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, no, it was official.
On Twitter.
It was an official, non-real poll.
It's an official.
There are numbers about
Twitter
this.
poll. Yeah.
There's something called epidemiology. What's that? How does that work?
But even if let's just assume that for a moment, that his Twitter poll had just stumbled on some like actual reality. Is there a difference between the behavior of people pre-vaccine and post-vaccine? In other words, if I'm unvaccinated and I'm staying in my house, then I'm not going to restaurants and I'm not going around people and I'm masking whenever I see other people outside of my pod. Am I as susceptible to COVID as I would be if I've been vaccinated and I'm being exposed once a week, twice a week, three times a week, 4 times a week without a mask? I mean, it's just so like, this is so rudimentary.
Yeah.
This is like, and it is so like, that's the thing, is that I just don't believe that these people could be that stupid to make these assertions in the way that they're making them.
I think they're scared. Like, I think this is you're realizing like, oh, the vaccine saved lives, and actually this heart attack stuff we're worried about, actually that's caused by COVID.
Right.
So maybe we're out a little bit ahead of our skis here, and we need to like try to create a narrative that we've actually been right about this whole thing.
Without a doubt. And, and somebody just, I am like, why are you mocking these guys when, you've got that Lena Wen, who was on CNN, saying that we're overcounting COVID deaths now. And it's a fair point. I mean, I think to some extent, like we're in our lane, and, we're not going to be able to push back too hard on what's going on CNN. But with that said, if you read Dr. Jeremy Faust, who is at Brigham's Young Hospital in Boston. He's working with someone named Benji Renton, who is fact checking the Washington Post on her Washington Post column, and he says, "Look, the question as to whether we're overcounting or undercounting is a legitimate question at any given point." And he thinks there's been times where we may have overcounted slightly, but he's looking at, Massachusetts and nationally. And he says, "I've told Dr. Wen this, but I can say with confidence, we are not overcounting COVID deaths right now, including in Massachusetts, the state highlighted by the Washington Post, because this is literally what I study."
Yeah. I would say that's a good answer. And like, I would point people towards Dr. Susan Oliver on YouTube, and also Debunk the Funk with Dr. Wilson on YouTube. Like those people are better equipped to deal with actual like people with medical credentials dealing with stuff. But the door stuff, it's just another example. He last December said, pointed this graph that showed a lot of people dying that had the 4th dose in Australia, and nobody dying that had the 0 dose. What he didn't point out was that like those the people that had the 4th dose are inordinately super old elderly people.
80 something like 80%. I don't know. 70% of the people who are getting that 4th dose are like above the age of 65 or 70.
Yeah, and the rest of Australia is just super vax. So like these are basic things that like actually the people, like doctors and the statisticians, they don't want people to die in mass.
Right.
They're not actually in a conspiracy to hide this stuff. That's why, for instance, like Pfizer recently, they're looking at the guidance and studying about strokes in elderly patients, because this stuff there actually isn't a conspiracy to use this stuff to like weed off of people who are too critical of the government or something like that. Like this stuff is actually being monitored for safety.
Yeah, it really is. It really is. It is stunning. It's just like, it is so messed up. And to a certain extent, like the idea that when, or, these others can trumpet that is an example on some level of them like winning the argument in terms of having the platforms for this type of publicity, because as a society, we were so adamant about getting back to normal economic activity.
Right. It's just a flu, teachers. You stinking teachers. Stop being Fauci fearmonger and get back to the school class and start teaching some kids. Literally what he was doing.
Attorney Andrew, one note in yesterday's guest, the real difference between big business generally and its subset of big law is that the tools used by big law and the people that judge the use of such tools are under democratic control. Educating the media and law schools on their role in big law is all well and good, but using the legislature to close or prevent legal loopholes and cultivating and appointing judges with a left perspective are a higher priority. I would agree with that. Bingo dango. The Republicans will say Biden has an open border regardless of how much he cracks down on asylum seekers. Who is he doing this for? Yeah, that's the thing I don't understand. A company can send out a complete driverless car with no one in the driver's seat. If they sent it out with a person, but that person didn't have a license, then there would be fines and possibly jail time. Insane. CDL Och Des. Emma, any thoughts on Provorov?
Check out ESPN tomorrow.
Sydney Hickenbottom. Hi, Sam. I'm a guy since the launch of Air America, but last week I finally became a member. Sorry for the delay. The new Android app is top notch. I'd like to join the chorus of voices demanding the return of Emma or Majority Report merch. The people will not be denied. Well, this for that. And yeah, we should tell Julie.
I'm down.
Between the 101 and the 5. Hey, all, have you ever seen how Glenn Greenwald is now praising investigators for Lava Jato? I think that's an old clip.
Yeah, he originally was for Lava Jato. That's why I thought it was such a good idea.
That's what That's the first thing I thought. Oh, that's why.
I mean,
Jimmy
Glenn
Dore
did it
was like,
good.
I didn't get the message that we weren't supposed to order T-shirts.
Oh, shit, we're not for
Such an
Lava Jato?
idiot.
Shit. Oh, shit, I thought corruption was the one way to see the world.
It's crazy. Comrade greeting card. You should have someone on from Strong Towns to talk about how the suburbs are bankrupting and destroying our neighborhoods. Bradley, we write that down. Strong Towns. Woke moralist. If this show were right-wing, Monday's show would just be the content of their character, not the color of their skin line on repeat for 3 hours. Ricky from Georgia, have you seen that Arizona Attorney General's office set up an organization called the Transaction Records Analysis Center, or TRAC, that has been collecting financial transaction records of American citizens into a database and offering them to seemingly any law enforcement agency that asks? No, that seems messed up. Calling from a 920 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Is this me?
Yeah, who's this? Where are you calling from?
All right. Hi, Spencer from Minnesota.
Spencer from Minnesota, what's on your mind?
Yeah, two things. First is I don't know if you guys saw that we have a full Democrat majority in Minnesota now, which is already seeming to potentially make some good things happen. I just wanted to point out two things to keep an eye on. One would be, it looks like the House Dems are gonna put abortion protections, or rather remove restrictions from our law books in the state. So that's one positive outcome of this previous election that obviously all left-leaning folks are really excited about. And then two, Governor Walz just yesterday proposed a $12 billion education bill that basically encompasses everything from universal school lunch to child tax credits for families income below like $200,000 a year, which is, most of the state.
That's awesome.
And there's a lot more in that bill too. And, there'll be some sausage making with it, I'm sure. But it just looks like the Democratic majority is off to a good start in Minnesota. And I want, it'd be great if you guys could either find someone in Minnesota and maybe have a guest on about the outlook for this coming Congress, or just keep an eye on it, because I think
that's a good idea. There was a couple of
majority. We could have a big, a good direction for the national Democrats potentially.
Yeah, that's a good idea. There was a couple of states where Democrats got either veto-proof majorities or got like a what does he call it? What does Aaron call it? Like a three-way or what?
Trifecta?
Yeah, trifecta.
Trifecta. Yeah, thank you. Not a three-way. That would be a different thing. But
That's
trifecta.
a really progressive version of
exactly. That's a good idea. Maybe we'll have a show in like 6 to 8 months. 6 months would be good to see. Like, do a 6-month check-in on what those trifectas brought about in terms of legislation. Good way to check in on that.
Also, legal marijuana very likely coming down the pipeline this year too.
Nice.
But thanks.
Caller,
have a great day.
can I just ask you one thing? What about the gun stuff? Because I saw something where they were looking at giving cops leeway to basically like restrict people's access to guns, and I'd just say, like, if you look at where the cops live, they don't live in Minneapolis. They live in the lily white suburbs. And I just feel like that is problematic. And that's why I just...
Red flag laws in general are, you have to target the sale and manufacturing of weapons, not empower cops.
Empowering these cops. But I'm just curious if you heard anything on that.
I actually haven't, but I agree. I think it would be problematic. But I don't really have any good info on that. Sorry.
Right, that's cool.
Yeah, it's super easy for some of those state Democratic legislators to fall into that trap
because the cops do it.
Because the federal government's the one who has to do it, and they want to seem like they're doing something on gun violence. But I feel it's a slippery slope situation.
Yeah, it's like cops. If you have an interaction with a cop, they can take away your right to a gun. And I just think the people who are ever in interactions with cops aren't white people.
Appreciate the call.
Yep. Yeah. Have a good day. Bye.
Thanks, at one point, and maybe it was in 2014, 2015, when the Democratic caucus in the Senate, it was a non-binding resolution. They didn't have any authority because they were in the minority, voted to expand Social Security, having gone through the Obama years where Obama came into office with the explicit agenda of cutting Social Security, entitlement reform. He talked about that on even days before his inauguration. Obama did, and we spent the first 4 years of this show. I would say 5 years of the show, having Digby on every week talking about how they wanted to come for the Social Security. Joe Biden was a big part of that. He went around Harry Reid. You can read Brian Grimm's book, We Got People, on that same story. And I was hoping that at the very least, I could start my long, long trail into retirement without having to get back on the don't cut Social Security beat. But alas, ladies and gentlemen, the Republicans are back. They have nothing to talk about. Nothing is effective. And they are so for the people now, they want to cut your retirement insurance that you have paid into. Here is clip number 3.
Representative Rick Allen of Georgia.
And this is where they're headed. You know, they'll talk about like, we're going to cut the military, but the woke parts, and then we got to come for the entitlements.
Yeah, the CRT and the military.
Exactly. But here is Representative Rick Allen, Republican, Georgia.
What raising the age of retirement?
You know, that's interesting that you asked that question. People come up to me, they actually want to work on it.
Bullshit.
Yeah.
So that's on the table, you're saying?
Well, you know,
Make me work longer.
if people want to work longer, maybe you need to give them an
Oh.
incentive to do it.
Okay.
Yeah, there's a way to solve every one of these problems, by the way.
I know.
And actually, grow wealth at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Just take that right there.
Yeah,
All right,
there's
let me
no
just
one
be
that's
clear.
coming up to him outside of business owners who want a bit more leverage over their employees, saying that they want to work longer. That is made up. I mean, maybe there's a person or two,
No,
but largely, I mean, like
You can.
You
Social
can if you
Security
want.
does
Yeah.
not
And still
in
claim
any
it.
way inhibit you from working longer. If you want to work longer, you can work longer.
Yeah,
You
there's
can
no
work
law.
until the day you die if you want. But that's Alex Laws from Social Security Works. Ask them, like, what about raising are you planning to raise the Social Security retirement age when you're eligible for Social Security? And he says, a lot of people tell me they want to work longer.
Yeah.
And then they want to work longer so much that he says, maybe we should give them an incentive. In other words, we should punish them if they don't want to work longer.
Mm-hmm.
That's not an incentive. An incentive would be, we're going to expand Social Security for you if you stay in the workforce longer. Now, incidentally, if you do stay in the workforce longer, you will increase your Social Security payments. I think it's up to like 67, maybe. You can stay in there 70. But if he wants to expand them, sure. Why not? People are putting more money in, but that's not what he's talking about. He's talking about punishing people who want to retire at age 65.
Right. And all in
62.
service of the wealthy people that he is serving there, all because they don't want to raise the cap on Social Security, where income, all earned income would be able to be taxed under Social Security, and then there would be no issues here. All this stuff about, undercutting the universality of it. So wealthy people don't need it, right? Or for raising the retirement age. These are all ways to undercut the program at the expense of actually doing what's necessary to make sure that Social Security is as healthy as possible and tax wealthier people, since it just and raise the cap.
And let me be clear, because I want to say this every time. First off, you're going to hear, as they start to roll out the desire to cut, that Social Security is going to go bankrupt in 2033. Social Security is not going to go bankrupt. Social Security Trust Fund will run out of money in 2033 if we do not do some basic fixes to return the amount of income that Social Security tax is applied to, as it's done traditionally. And in the event, though, that we do nothing, Social Security Trust Fund will be insolvent, but Social Security as a system will pay out about 75% of your promised benefits right now. So when they talk about cutting things, they're basically saying we're going to cut to avoid cuts. That's what the game they're trying to play there. Let's just be clear on that. And there is an easy fix, like Emma says. You can simply raise. You can do a donut hole. You can raise the amount, the threshold in which are taxed, or you can just blow the whole cap up, and we'll never have to think about Social Security again. The other thing is that Social Security statutorily does not contribute to the deficit. It does not. It cannot. Legally cannot use money from the general fund to fund Social Security. So that's also a lie.
Right. And that's also when you hear people, Republicans talk about moving it into discretionary spending. They want it to be subject to those kinds of cuts.
And lastly, if you don't think wealthy people need Social Security, I agree with you. But the best way to means test is to use the system we have for means testing right now, which is called progressive taxation. Increase taxes on wealthy people, and you will get that money back, and you won't have to create a new bureaucratic system. It is the most efficient way to so-called means test everything in society. And that is, we do it on the taxation side. We pay everybody out universally, and it's just a question of how much does the government claw back? So I'll have to say that every time we talk about Social Security, because that's what we're going to start hearing the lies that are being spread by the Republicans.
Right.
Hey, speaking of lies that are spread by Republicans, George Santos, this guy it's literally like is it the id of the Republican Party just sort of like escaped its body and is just running around now naked?
Yeah.
This is amazing. George Santos just recently appointed to two committees in the House. They're not terribly substantial committees. One's like the small business
Science
one, and
tech,
then
the other, yeah.
Yeah, the other one's like some tech thing. And as he said the other day on the Steve Bannon show, he doesn't care where he goes. He's going to give 110%. I believe he's going to give 110% because we know 110% doesn't exist.
Yeah.
He's going to make it up. And because that's what he's apparently very good at. Just to be clear, Santos, just where we're at with him at this point, local Republicans have called for his resignation, of course, after he was inaugurated. They could have done it beforehand. Kevin McCarthy now says he has a few questions about Mr. Santos's background.
Perhaps the fact that didn't he claim that either he or one of his campaign workers was literally McCarthy's chief of staff?
That was one of the questions.
Hard to keep
Apparently,
track.
another one is Santos has a small business, which is
He's on the
called
Small Business Committee.
Yes, and it's called DeValder Organization, which is the fake name that he's been using apparently off and on for the past several years. And on financial disclosures, DeValder Organization paid him $700,000 in between dividends of between $1 and $5 million in 2021, I think it was. The business, according to the New York Times, has no public-facing presence. In other words, no website, none of this. I mean, it's just like a loan-out company. I have that from show business. Mr. Santos has provided little information about its operations, saying only that he did deal building and specialty consulting for a network of wealthy clients. However, on the financial disclosure form filed last September, there is a requirement that you have to list any client who you have charged more than $5,000 to. And either he has no clients that he's charged $5,000 or more to, which is pretty amazing for a company that made somewhere between 1.7 and $5.7 million. We have a lot of small clients, me personally, because it doesn't sound like he has any other payroll that he pays out. Or he's just not listing who gave him more than $5,000. Then there's all the other lies about how he worked for Citibank and Goldman Sachs. All that's fake. But here, this may be the worst.
Wait, which one? The one where he maybe allegedly stole $3,000 from a GoFundMe for a disabled veteran to get surgery for his dog's tumor?
Yes. And the story, I don't think we have video on that story. We have video
houses, everybody. Let's
yeah. So apparently,
who hasn't, right?
In May of 2016, this is from the Oyster Bay Patch, that local sort of like online thing. A guy named Richard Althoff was living in a tent, unhoused, in Howell, New Jersey. He had a service dog named Sapphire. The dog was sick. He managed to go see a vet, another New Jersey vet, and retired police officer, who said, "I'll help you go to a vet." They got to the vet, and they realized that this is going to be an expensive thing. And I think the vet said, "Oh, I know a guy who has a help pets charity." A guy named Richard DeVolder, who, as we now know, is Santos. Santos sets up a GoFundMe and then basically walks off. It's a long story, but walks off with the $3,000 because he says, "Oh, your dog can't be treated anyways, so I'm going to keep that money and give it to another dog," which is
the dog in him.
Yeah.
Got that dog in me.
He's got that dog. He's got that scammer dog in me.
But apparently, George Santos's former friend, a guy named Gregory Maury Parker, was telling this story to Anderson Cooper, and there's more. Remember that whole thing about Santos saying, "Well, I'm not Jewish, but I'm Jew-ish."
Right.
Well, it turns out he's a little bit motivated to be Jew-ish. Here is that interview on Anderson Cooper.
Who is this guy and how long has he been this way? Joining us now, a one-time friend and roommate of his, Gregory Maury Park. Gregory, I really appreciate you being with us. So you knew him as Anthony DeVolder from 2013 to 2018. How long did you actually live together?
We were only roommates for a few months. And I also knew him as Anthony Zabrowski.
So you knew him. Why did he say he had two names then?
Well, he used Zabrowski for his Friends of Pets United, his GoFundMe. And he would say, "Oh, well, the Jews will give more if you're a Jew." And so that's the name he used for his GoFundMes.
And what was he having GoFundMes for back then?
He had a
pause it. I just want to say, good for Anderson Cooper for being like, I'm not gonna even marinate
over that
response.
Yeah.
I think what they may ultimately find, again, we're speculating, but it is impossible to know. Like, we used to joke if George Santos is really his name, and apparently in some instances it was not. One has to wonder why he would be working as under an alias. It's not just because the Jews are going to give you more money if your last name is Zabrowski as opposed to DeVolder. Because he could have just gone around as Zabrowski everywhere, unless I guess he was in spaces where he didn't want to be perceived as a Jew.
He's diversifying his portfolio, please.
But it's interesting that he went back to Santos after his marriage to a woman, even though he's gay. It's almost as if there was something that marriage bestowed upon him that made him feel more comfortable in using his real name. Like, I don't know, maybe some immigration status. We don't know. But let's continue.
Having GoFundMes for back then?
He had a pet charity, Friends of Pets United. It was supposedly to help out with, sick animals and things like that. There's actually just an article released from one of my reporters who's been interviewing me a lot, Jacqueline Sweet, about how he conned a homeless military vet out of $3,000 for his service dog. And yeah, he was. Did
he actually have a pet charity? Did he have a pet?
He did like dogs, yes, activity as far as taking animals to the vet or buying food or anything when I went to visit him when this so-called charity was active, when they were getting donations.
And he told you apparently a lot of lies about himself as well.
Yes.
What did he say?
He said he went to Baruch. He said he went to NYU. He worked at Goldman. He worked at Citigroup. I mean, I'm more apt to find, a sliver of truth than I am a lie, because everything he said to me was a lie. He lied about his family having a home on Nantucket and the Cape. He lied about his mother being, a powerful woman in finance when she was, worked in, a domestic capacity.
And did you actually meet his mom?
No truth. Yes. I was very close with his mother. I believe I sent a picture in of her.
Okay, yeah. So we're showing a picture. So wait, so she actually lived in the same apartment as you in Santos for a time. Is that right?
Yes, she did. It was her, her daughter Tiffany, and then Anthony.
So did she know he was lying about stuff?
Yes, she would say, "Oh, Anthony and his stories," and it was kind of a shame because she was a very, very sweet woman. And, she used to tell me that, she worked her hands down to the bone, to just give him a better life.
Wait a second. So she referred to him as Anthony? Is it possible that George Santos is the fake name? And Anthony DeValder is the right name?
It might be. That would make sense.
Or he's just been using them for so long.
But the roommate knew him as DeValder. The roommate knew him as DeValder, so maybe Santos is the fake name.
Yeah. It's just crazy to me how we've talked about how GoFundMe and like the healthcare bills and the funds that are being raised on there are not oftentimes it ends up resulting in good outcomes because people get money, but more often than not it doesn't. And it's like a pitfall in our system that we have to have people resort to raising money for basic needs on this kind of website. And so like in many ways we talk, if Santos is the id of the Republican Party running around naked, he's also a creature and a creation of our culture and like using the fault lines to scam people for his advantage, desperate people. Like there's nothing more kind of American than that, frankly.
I think ultimately this guy, I can't remember. There was a guy, I think they made a movie 6 Degrees of Separation, who was going around pretending he was Sidney Poitier's son in New York, like I think in the early 80s.
Yeah.
And he stole, I think he went to Connecticut College and visited Connecticut College and stole somebody's like address book and just started calling people in the address book saying, I'm Sidney Poitier's son and I'm lost in the, like somebody stole my wallet and I need help. And like, he just sort of like went through the entire sort of like New York, just sort of like, living this sort of lie. And I have a feeling like this guy is like one of those guys. It's starting to feel.
He's Catch Me If You Can. Like he is the Leo. I mean, he's the
Frank Abagnale.
He's Frank Abagnale, but without the charm. And what's hilarious about that story too is that Frank Abagnale also fudged a lot of the details in his story about him being a con artist. So like that is who George Santos is. He's just not very charming or good at it.
Also, it was a lot easier to get away with con man type stuff, I think, before like the internet and communications across the globe.
Exactly. Much easier to sort of escape scrutiny. All right, let's, folks, I don't know if we're going to have time for any more calls. We might, but I doubt it. So I just want to let you know that. But because we got to get to this. This is fascinating what's going on with Steven Crowder. And let's play this first before I make my personal appeal to Steven Crowder. He, like 2 days ago, he put out this cryptic tweet that was something to the effect of like, I'm not going to be silent anymore. And honestly, I thought this was going to be some type of personal revelation that he had about himself that he's kept hidden away.
Mm-hmm.
Like he stored in, let's say, a closet and opened it up and said, here it is. But it turned out to be something a little bit different than I thought. As you know, he was fired very suddenly from the Blaze at the end of last year. Now, it could be just the Blaze went out of money, but he knew that his contract was up and maybe he presumed that they would, of course, re-sign him. And apparently they didn't. So much so that he didn't even have access to like his email list and this and that. I guess he's been like a full-on employee of the Blaze. I didn't really realize what their relationship was, but he didn't even have access to like his show assets, as it were. I wonder if he even owns the words Mug Club.
He had to set up a new, I mean, per that video on the Cordery, which I don't know if we have time to get into, but like he had to set up a new website to get everyone to give him his email addresses, and he had to do it twice because he effed it up the first time.
Yeah. A real tight operation. Conservatives can't run a business. I mean, that's what's clear, I think, obviously. But nevertheless, here is Steven Crowder enraged. Now, let's be clear. This is a clip that he posted. It is a compilation of his full hour on YouTube.
Well, he did a 27-minute episode of said like something like "This ends now," and he posted this is from that.
And to be clear, in other places, he makes it clear that he's not talking about the Blaze. He's talking about an offer he had to join a major conservative network, not a TV one, an online one. And
I'm playing Guess Who here, and I'm down to a few.
I'm pretty much down to one, I think.
It's either PragerU, which I find hard to believe, or Daily Wire.
Yeah.
Well,
who knows? We don't know, but let's listen to this.
So, if you've watched for the last decade, you know that I've always made it clear that we here at Mug Club are in the business of serving you, the viewer, you watching, listening right now. I've also made it clear that I wouldn't be in the business.
Pause it for 1 second. Now, there's a couple of things I want you to notice. When Steven gets even slightly nervous about something, because I noticed this when he was talking to Ethan Klein before Ethan Klein brought me on their debate and he ran away. He gets a little bit breathless. Like things contract. I mean, this is like, when you're an actor or you're a performer in some way, that like sometimes you can get training to like, keep yourself from contracting your chest. And you can hear he's getting very nervous about like blowing the whistle because he's going out onto the limb here. And it almost looks like he's about to faint, frankly. But
well, there, look at that.
Now I'm unclear. It doesn't look like he's got his holster on. So maybe
the holsters have been taken down.
Wow.
Maybe he's afraid because he doesn't have his gun strapped to his side, which gives him his strength.
He doesn't have his blankie.
Yeah, but he is wearing his favorite shirt that makes his muscles look really big today. So
did you see in the bottom left corner? There's that. You know what that is in the bottom left? That's a bunch of pipes.
Oh,
tobacco pipes.
Well,
what a nerd.
Now we can do that in the House offices.
So, if you've watched for the last decade, you know that I've always made it clear that we here at Mug Club are in the business of serving you.
What?
The viewer, you watching, listening right now. I've also made it clear that I wouldn't be in the business of attacking other conservatives, regardless of disagreements or personal issues. And I've always explained my logic was relatively simple. I believe that the world was better with more voices out there rather than less, regardless of minute differences, considering the magnitude of the battle that we are genuinely fighting for our country right now. But for the first time, I have to say that I believe many of those in charge in the right-leaning media are actually at odds with what's best for you, the viewer, the customer, and more importantly, the country.
The customers always.
We here at Mug Club, we thought that we were all in this together, that we were fighting the media, entertainment, industrial complex. We thought that we were all genuinely taking it to big tech.
Mm-hmm.
But too many of those in charge of the big conservative platforms are verifiably in bed with them. Big tech is in bed with Big Con. The people you thought,
It's a funny name for it.
the people I thought were fighting for you, a lot of it has been a big con. Now, I'm specifically avoiding naming names or going after individuals in this video.
Can you name their religion?
Because I genuinely hope that those I'm addressing, and you know who you are, have a change of heart.
Whoa, pause
It's
it for
never
1
too late to do
second.
the right thing.
Pause it for 1 second. Pause it. He's just said that Big Con is against the American people and the audience, but yet he's not going to name names. Like, does he think that even if they capitulate to his demands, that they're going to change their disgusting attitude in their relationship with big tech?
I mean, maybe he'd name names if he was a little bit braver. He's got to get the holsters back, and he can finally give us the real names here.
You can see how tightened his chest is. Like, I mean, this guy, I feel like he's having some type of asthma attack.
I know.
While this is going on. Like, honestly, I'm starting to think that maybe those pipes are really just like, disguised inhalers. But let's continue. Go back a little bit because he's going to explain how Big Con is in league with big tech.
But not name names. Interesting.
But not name names.
Big tech is in bed with Big Con. The people you thought, the people I thought were fighting for you, a lot of it has been a big con. Now, I'm specifically avoiding naming names or going after individuals in this video because I genuinely hope that those I'm addressing, and you know who you are,
give you a better contract,
have a change of heart.
Give me a better contract.
It's never too late to do the right thing.
Yep.
Guys,
get rid of those clauses.
This is a genuine plea. We can all do better. We can all do better. It doesn't have to be this way. And please, don't make me have to provide receipts. Now, to the others out there who have now been able to verify, have been locked into exploitative contracts that I have the luxury of not having to sign, which is why I'm doing this. Those of you out there who've been locked into this and you know what I'm talking about, stay tuned. I've got something for you before this video is done.
Whoa.
Wow.
So to be clear, he has been what appears to be is he has been offered a job from one of these big cons networks, and he got the contract and he was shocked. And then it sounds like he spoke to some of the people who are working for these big cons, and they are in these, what did he call it? Something, what was the adjective he used about the contract?
Exploitative.
What?
But wait a second.
Exploitative?
It's contract. Doesn't every party, you sign a contract if you think it's in your best interest?
Yeah, I
How
mean,
can you
freedom of it.
How can there be an existence of an exploitive contract if you just walk into it yourself?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Isn't that what we have been told over and over and over and over again by conservatives? That the idea that there is no such thing as an exploitive contract because you have free will. And if you enter into the contract, it can't possibly be exploitive because you have found it in your best interest to do it. And the idea that anybody else has signed a contract and it could be exploitive is impossible based upon almost every single principle of capitalism that Steven Crowder has espoused for a decade.
And what would an exploitative contract look like for, and I know we'll get to it in a second, but for somebody who has a lot of money, has a lot of power, like what is his definition of being exploited by a big con company?
Well,
that's
hold
my
on for
question.
a second. Well, yeah, but this is important because if there is such a thing as an exploitive contract, that means that there's such a thing as asymmetry in the marketplace. That one person has the ability to coerce another person, or one party, I should say, has the ability to coerce another person to get involved in an exploitive contract. Because if they don't have the ability to coerce you into it, an exploitive contract can't exist. It is an oxymoron because a contract implies two people have entered into an agreement, both with their own will. And so if an exploitive contract can exist, then there must be power imbalances in the marketplace. And if there are power imbalances in the marketplace that can force people to sign an exploitive contract, there is no such thing as a free market. That means that somehow the context of the market, the way that it's set up, favors one party versus another party. And so who sets up the marketplace? Who enforces that contract? If the contract is broken, where do you go? Who has the monopoly of force? It is the government. And if the government has set up the marketplace in which an exploitive contract can exist, then they have set it up in such a way to favor one party versus another party, because that party has the ability to coerce the second party.
And surprise, it's the bosses.
It's the bosses. And if that's the case, then the only way to get a so-called free market, or at least one that has some symmetry where you do not have exploitive contracts, is for that same entity which set up the marketplace, which it has the monopoly of force to enforce the contract, the government, to step in and even the playing field so that there are no exploitive contracts. So the FTC says you can't have non-compete clauses in your contract. Or maybe we set up labor unions so that the other party has more power, bargaining power, and does not get into a coercive contract. I mean, we can go on and on and on. But you understand what Steven Crowder has admitted in this video is that everything he talks about, the fundamental basics of what he talks about in terms of his vision of what U.S. capitalism period has been a lie.
Yep. And so now the capitalist cheerleader tries to do a little bit of class solidarity. Let's see how it works out for him.
Yeah, exactly. And I guess he released, or somebody took a picture of the contract and put it out. He has redacted the name of the entity that obviously wants to hire him under these, what he says, exploitive terms. And maybe they are exploitive. It's almost largely irrelevant once he admits that there is such a thing as an exploitive contract. He has admitted that his entire worldview about capitalism has been a lie. But let's take a look at it.
Here's the worst part. Do not, kids, under any circumstances, sign a contract with people who claim to be conservative, but will penalize you 25% for any demonetization or sponsor boycott. Look, let me read this to you. If any of the major platforms, oh no, sorry, that's the second one. Let me go back to the first one. There's another 20%. It's 45% to get a content strike. Let's start with the demonetization. If blank is boycotted or dropped by more than 50% of the advertising partners, the company is not able to replace them within 90 days, the fee will be reduced by 25%. That's a sponsorship boycott. So that's saying, hey, liberals, boycotts work. They work on our guys.
Pause it for a second.
We'll punish.
Now, I will just say this. That's good to know. That's good to know that if somebody from whatever entity this is gets a sponsorship boycott, that they will have a fee reduced. It's good to know.
It's also the market. Like a capitalist says, hey, if you do something, if you behave in a way that hurts the revenue that I was expecting from you, I'm going to, that's going to be reflected in your fee.
And we should say that, it's not just, boycotts are not just political. You should have seen it when they got rid of the old Coke. People went crazy and the market responded. But it's just good to know for folks who are wondering what the value of a boycott is. If you want to take a little money out of someone like Steven Crowder's pocket, not Steven Crowder, he's not going to sign this unless they come around and give him a lower percentage because of his principles.
Damn, look at the content strike, the B that says, if any major platforms, e.g. YouTube, there's who wrote this contract?
Yeah.
I mean, maybe that's irregular for them to have typos in it, but I mean, it seems kind of shoddy.
The interesting thing is going to be like if he drops this, we're going to know who this company is.
I think he should expose him.
I think he should. I don't think he will, but I hope so.
Let's keep going here.
Fee will be reduced by 25%. that's a sponsorship boycott. So that's saying, hey, liberals, boycotts work. They work on our guys. We'll punish them for you. Let me go
now
on.
It's like saying
Specifically, YouTube
you've told
demonetization.
everybody, you ding dong.
If any of the major platforms issues a content strike such that Crowder cannot be monetized on such platform, and the company is not able to resolve the issue within 90 days, the fee will be reduced by 25% moving forward. Now, I thought this was a mistake because, these people maybe didn't know who I am, that we've been demonetized for 3 years.
Well, they probably did know that.
No, it was made very clear to me in no uncertain terms. This is what's sent out to everybody.
Wow.
And then if you get a strike,
he's shaking their paws. Sorry, just go back a little bit so we can see how he shakes in that. But from my perspective, if we cause the Daily Wire to lose advertisers, from my perspective, I don't care if that comes out of the investors and their sort of dividend, or if that comes out of the talent. I'm frankly just happy they lost the advertisers. But it's sad. Yeah.
And then if you get a strike, meaning a suspension, another 20% reduction. And then another 20% of it happens on Apple. And then another 10% of it happens on Facebook. And then another 10% of it happens on Spotify. Imagine you're deplatformed, as we've seen in the past, where all of the major entities decide to remove you in one day. Rather than having a conservative alternative, you would now be down to 5 to 15% of the revenue of your contract. Think about this for a second. Those in charge, the big conservative, the big con, and it really is the biggest con going right now. They're making it known in their contracts that they will enforce the guidelines of big tech and punish conservatives on their behalf. Don't worry, Wojcicki. Trust me, these conservatives will stay in line. If they get demonetized, we take away 25% of their operating budget. Take another 20% away if they get a hard strike. Hey, don't worry, Zuckerberg. We've got your back. Hope to see you at the UFC Apex.
That's their back they're getting.
Yeah, that's capitalism, baby. You're costing your employer money. You're not doing your job.
Wait,
they are a money-making operation.
These guys are in it for money and not the love of the game?
Yeah, I'm shocked by that. Also, you can see how insecure he feels now that he's basically gone from the Blaze TV, right? That was where he left. He was looking for another entity, a larger one, we can speculate as to what it is, that would give him a little bit more security so he could continue to be racist, homophobic, transphobic, and extreme without consequence. And that's what he's shaking upset about, is that the contract that they proposed to him was not going to give them that security, because newsflash, they're a for-profit company.
Yeah.
And they see you're explicitly racist or bigoted content as a liability.
What he said, explicitly says, oh, well, you won't have me to come lie about the election and say that Arizona, there's some really fishy stuff. That's what he's actually touts when he says they want to silence me. It's because of my election lies and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I have to say though, I am really surprised at how little confidence Crowder must have in his own business acumen.
Mm-hmm. Go independent, buddy.
Well, he is, but it's not going to be enough revenue.
Yeah,
we are not paid. We are not paid by anybody. We had a license deal with Peacock for 12 months, which involved none of those provisions. It was basically, we rerun your show and give you money. And the only requirement is that we needed to have a break. We needed to have 2 breaks. That was it. And end the first hour at 55 minutes. So there was a little bit constraining. Sometimes they like to go long with an interview. Sometimes they like to go shorter, whatnot. But we run a business here. This is a business. I am really surprised at how conservatives can't run businesses. But with that said, and somebody just suggested this on the IM. Silo Sibin says Crowder just wants that nice LEC contract. Pick him up, Sam. And Matt was talking about his net worth. People can verify this by going on the internet. What his net worth is. And I want to extend an olive branch to Steven Crowder If and I understand his disillusion with the big con, but if he wants to remain independent, I am willing to have a conversation with him about how to do so. I can tell him how we have done it here for 12 years.
Yep.
Actually 13 years now, or 12 and a half or something, 3,000 shows. I, of course, I don't have a holster or gun I wear. I have a huge 16-inch knife strapped to my calf down underneath here. So I am going to extend an olive branch. I will talk to Steven Crowder about this. Steven, I think you guys know how to contact me. And if I need to talk to his dad about this, I'm happy to have that conversation as well. So maybe Steven and his dad can show up, and I can bring Saul, and we can sit down, and the four of us can hash this out. So I want to put that out there, that I am open to having a conversation about this and help him in any way I can get out from the under the boot of what he calls the big cons.
Big con, yeah.
Yep. So,
do you think he's like? I know other people have gotten in these contracts. Like, do you think he's talking about Candace Owens?
That's what I'm thinking, right? I'm shocked that she is not.
Can we put up that tweet? Hold on. Can we put up that tweet? Do we have the tweet? This is the best part, is that his audience thinks they've figured it out, who it is, and put up that tweet. There's the contract. But if you go in and read what it says, the contract they tried making Crowder sign is too Jewish to not be from Ben Shapiro and the Daily Wire. So there it is. What a great audience he's cultivated.
Shapiro's not a secular Jew, so I don't know if Crowder might need to amend his.
That's right. Crowder wanted to talk about the secular Jews, but not the religious Jews.
Yeah.
I wonder if when he made that point, he was anticipating maybe a negotiation going on at that time. I wonder if he would amend that now. Interesting. Yeah. Very interesting. But this drama will continue to unfold, I am sure. All right, we got more clips, but we're going to have to do those tomorrow or Friday. I'm going to do some IMs, and then we'll get out of here. The caller portion of the show, like I predicted, not going to happen anymore for the rest of this program. And we'll read some IMs, and then we'll get going here. Iowa Ryan in Peoria, Illinois, on Sunday, somebody threw what the news is calling a flammable item into a Planned Parenthood, $1 million in damage. I would consider that a firebombing. This was 2 days after JB signed a sweeping abortion protection bill. This Planned Parenthood doesn't do abortions, but they do trans person care. Maddie the boy. Great interview today. Brian Mier was especially insightful, talking about Brazil's interpretation of free speech. Yes, that was really, I think, really important, and it's not being contextualized, I think, in the news. Swollen Nolan. Great interview with Brian. Dalaban. Has Matt considered changing his channel name? How about the Matt Leck experience? I have several success stories. I would have shared.
What is this fixation with this?
Unfortunately, I have no idea who that guy is, nor do I know what Next Door is. Your letter.
Next Door? Sounds
your
like
left.
something I might be interested in.
Your left testicle. This might be the most popular opinion, but I'm genuinely hoping we can get 3 libertarians callers in a row today. That would not be. Left of the box. In Ontario, the Ford government has taken a leap toward American-style healthcare. If you live in Ontario, you need to be concerned. Get involved to prevent further privatization. Don't wait for it to be your problem. Jonathan Armstead. I have an interview suggestion. The book Beyond Digital Age to a Post-Capitalist World by Jonathan Crary. It's unread by me, but the description says he argues that our digital age is synonymous with the disastrous terminal stage of global capitalism and its financialization of social existence, mass impoverishment, and military terror. Sounds like fun. We will look into that book. All right, 3 more. Scott 314, the best thing we could do for Social Security is to increase the wage base subject to the tax. So those making significant wages have to pay in more than on their first 140K of wages. That's another way of saying lift the cap. And you can lift the cap. You can get rid of the cap at 140. For some reason, people are saying, well, don't impose it from like 140 to 250, the donut hole. I'm not sure what the theory is behind that. But regardless, lifting the cap, even a donut hole, will make Social Security far more solvent because traditionally we have captured somewhere around 91, 92% of the nation's income has been subject to Social Security tax. And now it's down to about 84, 85, 86% because of the massive wealth disparity we have in this country. So much of the money is actually in the hands of so few people that so much of the money exists above the cap. Catfish James, media industrial complex. You mean popular entertainment? And
final all these guys are civil libertarians now.
Final item of the day. Ah, gosh darn it. There goes Fauci shadow banning the optical mouse guy on Nextdoor again. Wait until we find out Tony DeValder started using the name George after he watched George Costanza in Seinfeld.
There we go.
Bradley, Matt, Emma, great job today. Emma will be here tomorrow. I'll see you on Friday. Bye-bye.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the lie bar. But finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know